Chapter 711. That day the Wang sisters received Zhang Yan's order to return to Donghua. This time they went to Hanyuan and discovered that the inside of the sect, whether it was the topography, the mountains, the temples, the towers, everything had changed greatly compared to the past. Gradually, there were signs of flourishing and flourishing. For a moment there were too many things to take in. At this moment, the news of their return had already spread to the mountain. Not long after, they saw a green-clothed woman walking down from the peak of the mountain. She approached them and said with a smile, "I've been separated for more than 30 years. My two senior sisters have finally returned." Wang Keting recognized this woman as Zhaogan Jiang Ro. Her beautiful eyes lit up. "It's junior sister Jiang. I haven't seen you for a long time. I didn't expect you to have also reached the core transformation realm." Wang Kaiwei also came up, looked at her a few times and said, "Congratulations, junior sister." Jiang Ro was embarrassed. She shook her head. "I was just lucky. How can I compare to you two sisters?" In terms of age, she was older than the Wang sisters by dozens of years. The quality of her core transformation realm was even worse. She felt that she couldn't compare to the two sisters. However, it wasn't that her talent wasn't good. In the past, Hanyuan's sect lacked external cultivation materials, so her cultivation stagnated. Later, when Zhang Yan took over the sect and took back the celestial city, she was able to continue cultivating. Other than her, Xian Chao from the Great Forest sect had also reached the core transformation realm. After the three of them chatted for a while, Wang Kaiwei asked, "Junior sister, is Master in the sect?" Jiang Ro answered, "Ever since the Dragon Pillar meeting, Master has been in seclusion. He hasn't come out for more than 20 years. After the Wang sisters returned from the sea, they flew to Tsangzhu Peak. They didn't stop to ask for information along the way, so they didn't know the changes in the Dongsheng continent. Now that they heard about the Dragon Pillar meeting, Wang Keting was instantly interested. She wanted to ask for more details, but Wang Kaiwei reminded her, "Sister, come with me to visit Master first. If you have anything to say, ask when you come back." Wang Keting quickly stopped thinking and said seriously, "Listen to me." Jiang Ro said, "The restrictions on the peak have changed a lot. It's different from the past. I'm afraid you two sisters don't know about it. Come with me." The two sisters didn't agree. The three of them carried the clouds and ascended to the peak. Halfway up the mountain, he saw a beautiful woman standing in front of a temple halfway up the mountain. She had a head full of pearls and emerald green hair. Her footsteps were slightly trembling, and her ornaments were jingling. Above her head was a cloud that looked like a golden flower, emitting a strange fragrance. There were dozens of attendants behind her. Wang Keting asked in surprise, "Junior sister, who is this?" Jiang Ro glanced at her and replied, "That's Madame Zhao Ru, sect leader Zongtaekyo's Dao companion. After the Dragon Pillar spell assembly, most of the lands in the north of Dongxing will belong to this sect. She's here to invite sect leader to a banquet." Wang Keting rolled her eyes and giggled. She clapped her hands and said, "Then Master must have helped Zhongtai in the Dragon Pillar battle. Am I right?" Jiang Ro nodded. "Senior sister is right." When the two sisters looked at Madame Zhao, the latter was also looking at the Wang sisters. Seeing the two beauties standing on top of the clouds, riding on the wind with their silk belts fluttering, they looked like fairies. She couldn't help but feel envious. "I wonder where Master Zhang found them. These two sisters have good looks and talent. If they were in Zhongtai sect, they would be able to inherit the sect. If I met them earlier, I would have taken them in no matter what." At this moment in the temple, Fan Yinghui also looked out. She saw the two beautiful ladies with fair skin and deep roots. She couldn't help but think, "From this, I can deduce their master. This Master Zhang's background isn't that simple. If he came from an ordinary sect, he wouldn't be able to find such beauties." She previously reminded Madame Zhao to pay more attention to Hanyuan's sect. It wasn't entirely because she wanted to sow discord, but more because she was secretly wary of this sect. She always felt that someone like Zhang Yan must have other plans for setting up his sect in Dongxing State. It wasn't that she was overthinking things. Currently, the Python tribe that occupied the northern sea was a guest from the other continents. Originally, No matter how much the 5 great sects disagreed with each other, they had unanimously rejected them. If another sect like the Python tribe appeared, the situation in Dongxing would definitely change drastically. Madame Zhao wanted to greet the Wang sisters, but before she could go forward, the 2 ladies bowed to her from afar and went up the mountain. She was startled. After thinking for a while, she understood the reason. She thought, I was too impatient. After returning to the mountain, the first thing she did was to pay respects to her master. This was etiquette and she knew it. It was just that she had a high position in Zhongtai sect and everything was up to her heart's desire. Moreover, she was anxious to invite Zhang Yan down the mountain, so she didn't think about this. After thinking for a while, she told the maid beside her, "Go and find out where the 2 ladies are staying. I'll send the gifts later." The Wang sisters arrived at the peak in a short while. Jiang Ro couldn't stay here any longer, so she bowed and left. At this time, the cave door opened and Jingyu walked out. He cupped his hands in greeting and laughed. "The 2 ladies have returned to the mountain?" Wang Kating went up and said, Did Master say when he will come out of seclusion?" Jingyu shook his head. He didn't mention this. Wang Kaiwei thought for a while before saying, "Sister, today is a rush, so the 2 of us will first pay our respects at the door. After burning incense and bathing tomorrow, we will come and pay respects to Master." Wang Kating made a sound of agreement and happily agreed. Just as the 2 of them were about to salute, they heard a rumbling sound in the cave as if a door had been opened. A clear voice came from inside. Kating, since you've returned to the mountain, come in." Wang Kating let out a soft cry and happily said, "Master has come out of seclusion." Wang Kaiwei pulled her and shook her head lightly, reminding her not to be rude. The 2 sisters tidied up their clothes and entered the cave. They had only taken a few steps when they saw a misty fog in front of them and heard the sound of wind. They didn't know why, but they suddenly felt that danger was everywhere and the murderous intent was biting cold. They couldn't help but be shocked and stopped their footsteps. At this time, they heard Zhang Yan's voice transmission. "This is a new cave protection array that I've refined a month ago. It's not complete yet, so it's inconvenient to remove it. The 2 of you can go ahead and you'll be safe." The 2 of them obeyed and walked for 100 steps. The fog suddenly disappeared and they found themselves in a spacious cave hall. Looking up, they saw Zhang Yan sitting upright on the jade couch. His demeanor was clear and his eyes were filled with spiritual light. Above his head were 3 clouds that were sometimes separated and sometimes closed. It was like a mist or a sunset, dazzling with 5 different colors. There was also a sign of surging and surging, totally different from other 3rd-degree realm cultivators. The Wang sisters hurriedly went forward and kowtowed, "Disciple greets Master." Zhang Yan said with a smile, "Get up. I see that the 2 of your cultivations have improved greatly and there are other changes in the evil pill. Did you have some fortuitous encounter?" The Wang sisters looked at each other but didn't get up. Wang Kaiwei said, "When the 2 of us went there, we met Clear Feather's sect's Taoist Wang on the East Sea and went there to have a seat. We didn't expect to meet Tao Jinren on this trip. Reverend said that we sisters might not be able to return for 20 to 30 years, so we each imparted a divine ability to us and wanted us to cultivate for a period of time. It won't be too late to go after that." Saying that, she bowed down again and said, "Disciple didn't get permission from the sect and secretly cultivated another sect's divine ability. May Master punish me. But the person who made the decision is me and it has nothing to do with Kating." When Wang Kating heard that, she instantly panicked and said, "Sister, how can you say that? The divine ability is learned together, so we should punish together." Wang Kaiwei stared at her and said softly, "Don't mess around." In reality, no matter if it was Qinsong School or Zhang Yan's Xiaoyu sect, they didn't forbid the divine ability of other sections. However, she faintly felt that Tao Jinren seemed to have an ulterior motive and seemed to be plotting something. However, when faced with a divine ability given by a heavenly abode, they couldn't reject it. Under the circumstances, they could only accept it. Zhang Yan knew that Tao Jinren was good at calculating and setting up formations. It wasn't surprising that he had a way to see if the 2 of them were going smoothly. However, at Tao Jinren's realm, he wouldn't do things without a reason. There must be a deeper meaning behind his action. He pondered for a while and guessed the reason. He couldn't help but smile. Back when he helped Tao Jinren to achieve heavenly abode on the sea, the latter promised to help him with 3 things. In Zhang Yan's opinion, a favor from a heavenly abode shouldn't be used on small matters, so he never asked for it. However, as his cultivation improved day by day, Donghua continent faced another calamity. If he needed a heavenly abode's help, even Tao Jinren wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. Therefore, he gave a divine ability to the Wang sisters for free. It was also an excuse to remind him that some favors should be used when needed. He looked at the Wang sisters and said with a smile, "When did I say that I would punish the 2 of you? Get up." Tao Jinren was able to establish his own sect and become the founder of that sect. The divine ability he taught is definitely not bad. The 2 of you just need to practice it well. However, you need to remember that cultivation is the foundation of achieving Tao. The Wang sisters saw that their master's expression was normal and his tone was friendly. They guessed that this matter didn't violate any taboo, so they finally let go of this matter and got up. Wang Kaiwei carefully took out a wooden box from the sachet and placed it on her palm. She took a few steps forward and placed it on the jade table in front of Zhang Yan. She said, "Master, this is the item that the 2 of us took from Guangyuan sect. When we left, Elder Shen solemnly told us that this item was very important and that we had to hand it to you personally." Zhang Yan's gaze shifted downwards and landed on the wooden box, revealing a solemn expression. Then he extended his hand and opened the lid, revealing the contents inside. On the top layer was a letter. It was written that it was for him personally, and it was signed by Shen Yinfeng of Guangyuan sect. Zhang Yan took the letter and opened it. In the letter, it was Elder Shen's own narration. He mainly wrote that after the 16 sects battle, he borrowed Jun Yang's essence to help him cultivate in seclusion. He originally thought that he would only need 30 years of intensive cultivation to reach the 3rd stage. However, he didn't expect that he would need 20 more years to succeed. Then he used the Yuanying Dharma body to go deep into the underground palace and found the remains left behind by Shun Chong after his ascension. He found the 2 missing talisman techniques, and other than that, there was another item. Zhang Yan put the letter aside and reached out his hand. He slowly picked up an inconspicuous thin book in the box. On it were 4 words, Shen Chong's legacy. Shen Chong moved unhindered in the 9 states and rarely met a worthy opponent. In the end, he relied on a golden talisman to ascend. This was the notes he left behind before he left. Zhang Yan was deeply moved. When he asked for this item from Elder Shen, he only mentioned it as a test. He didn't expect that Guangyuan sect would really have it. How precious was the notes left behind by a mighty person who had ascended. Even though there were a few mighty people in Qinsong school who had ascended, he wasn't their direct disciple and hadn't cultivated to that level. Hence, it wasn't his turn to look at it. He had always believed that everything should be done in advance. If one didn't plan beforehand, it would be useless. It was already too late for him to plan when things came to a head. Moreover, when the 3 great tribulations came, all cultivators would be in the tribulations. No one could predict what would happen in the future. It was definitely not a bad thing to be able to take a look at the mysteries within. Looking at the thin book in his hand, he held his breath and slowly flipped the pages. Chapter 712. Zhang Yan flipped open the book and looked at it. The first few pages were Shen Chong's rough description. Shen Chong started cultivating when he was in his teens. At the age of 46, he condensed a 2nd-grade golden core. At the age of 200, he cultivated Yuanying. At the age of 712, he formed a grotto heaven. He was different from his peers. For the next 2,000 years, he spent most of his time traveling outside. It was only when he was about to ascend that he returned to the sect and wrote this book. In just a few hundred words, an ascended Jinren's entire life of cultivation was presented in front of his eyes. Maybe it was because this book was left for the juniors in the sect to study. The part about how he formed a grotto heaven was written in great detail. What was even rarer was that at the bottom, there were several methods of forming a grotto heaven that he knew and listed out the pros and cons of each method. After Zhang Yan read it, He felt that he had benefited a lot. But when he continued to read, there were dozens of pages that were blank. He put down the book and thought about the mysteries within. He thought that his cultivation wasn't good enough and he couldn't see through it. But it wasn't that he wasn't anxious. With this book in his hands, he could slowly comprehend it in the future. He placed the book back into the wooden box and with a wave of his sleeve, he kept it in his bag. After tidying up the scroll, he muttered to himself for a moment, raised his finger and pointed in the air, condensed his chi to draw the talisman, then with another push, the talisman passed through the air into the hands of the Wang sisters, saying, "The two of you have done very well this time. This method was derived by me using the 9 mysterious scriptures. The first person to receive this teaching is only Yen. Now I will pass it to the two of you." Breaking the shell wasn't difficult, but it wasn't easy either. The Wang sisters' Dan had reached the 4th grade, and the previous method of breaking the shell was obtained by Zhang Yan from the Jingluo courtyard. However, this method was derived from the remnant jade, and there were many more variations. The two sisters were delighted to receive this method. After they received it, they carefully experienced it and understood the variations within. They understood that if they could calm down and practice this method, breaking the Dan acupoint would be a piece of cake. They thanked him. "Thank you, benefactor, for giving us this method." Zhang Yan smiled and nodded. "Go back and study it well. When it's time to hatch, Master will protect the two of you." The two sisters nodded in agreement, bowed, and retreated. After the two left, Zhang Yan called Jingyu over and said, "Is there a guest in the sect?" Jingyu replied, "Master, Zhongtai sect has recently chased Chunyu Ji and the others to the sea. The north of Dongxing is now dominated by this sect. To celebrate, they are holding a banquet to entertain cultivators from other sections. The people from the foot of the mountain are here to invite Master to attend the banquet." Zhang Yan asked again, "Which ones came?" Jingyu answered, "There are 2 of them. Zhao Ru and her eldest son, Du Shixuan, also came with them." Zhang Yan shook his head slightly and said, "No, I saw 3 strong auras at the foot of the mountain. Besides Madame Zhao and Jinren Du, there should be another person." Jingyu hurriedly said, "Xiao Tong will try to find out later." Zhang Yan waved his hand. "There's no need." He closed his eyes and silently sensed. As his cultivation became more profound, he could detect the auras within a few miles of himself if he carefully observed. If he could cultivate to the 3rd level, no matter who it was, as long as their cultivation was lower than his, once they entered the range of the heaven and earth lock, he could immediately detect them. Madame Zhao and Du Shixuan's auras were needless to say. One was as gorgeous as a flower with a hidden meaning, while the other was strong and brave with unparalleled strength. He could tell. On the other hand, the aura of the 3rd person was thought-provoking. It was strange, erratic, and difficult to fathom. It wasn't someone he was familiar with, yet it just so happened that it was slightly familiar. He thought about it again and suddenly remembered that this person was very similar to Xiao Zhongxiang, who was defeated by him. Once he thought about this person's background, he could roughly guess this person's origin. His eyes flickered slightly and he asked, "Jingyu, has anything unusual happened in Dongxing State recently?" Jingyu touched his head and thought about it. He raised his head and said, "Master, there is one. It is said that the Dragon Pillar's prohibition is gradually disappearing, revealing a stone mansion below. Zhongtai wanted to monopolize it, but the 3 sects also wanted to dip their hands in it. They refused no matter what, so the 3 sects are in a deadlock. Until now, they have not found out what exactly is inside." After listening to this news, Zhang Yan thought about the cause and effect and roughly guessed the purpose of Madame Zhao's visit. It was not as simple as attending a banquet. He smiled and said, "Those who come are guests. Jingyu, go and tell them that I am hosting a banquet tonight to entertain the 3 Taoist friends." Dongxing South State, Dachin State, Quantum Inn. The magical treasure, Yongming Well, was placed in the middle of the main hall, and the 4 Yuanian cultivators of the sect were sitting around it. Chancellor Go Sumin's expression was grave. Looking at the 3 pavilion masters in front of her, she said, "In these days, the number of disciples in the sect who have been poisoned by the miasma has increased. Yesterday, there were 3 Ming Chi disciples who died from the poison. Although the cultivation of these disciples is not high, they are the foundation of our sect. My heart aches for them to die in vain like this. Today, I have invited the 3 senior brothers here to discuss how to deal with the crisis in front of us. Although he said this, his eyes were looking at the person sitting in front of him. This person's face was pale and beardless, and he looked to be in his 70s. He wore a large gray feather robe and held a golden bell bamboo cane in his hand. On his shoulder was a one-horned demon frog, and he had an indifferent expression on his face. Seeing that Go Soo-min was looking at him, he raised his eyelids and turned his body to the side. In a bland tone, he said, "Junior brother, you don't need to look at me. What ideas can I have?" Go Soo-min said, "Senior brother, Tseng must be joking. Who doesn't know that you have refined pills in the golden grain pool for hundreds of years and have refined 10 cauldrons of suspending yang pills? They can protect one's life and chi, and resist external evils. It shouldn't be difficult to give some to the disciples in the sect, right?" Daoren Tseng laughed dryly. "I have worked hard for more than 300 years, and this is all I have. Junior brother, why are you thinking about it? If you are talking about promoting cultivation and healing injuries, I can be of some help. But curing the miasma is not my forte. Junior brother, you have found the wrong person." Go Soo-min was not willing to let him go just like that. She said, "If that's the case, then let's not talk about curing the miasma. Junior brother will ask for some face from you. Lend me a cauldron of suspending yang pills. How about that?" Sung Doran's face stiffened. He said unwillingly, "My 10 cauldrons of pills may seem like a lot, but I still have to distribute them to the disciples and a few of my colleagues. I don't have much left." Without waiting for Go Soo-min to speak, he turned his head and looked at Sun Chu, who was sitting on the east seat. He said, "Junior brother Shin, I heard that you have invited an expert in this field?" Sun Chu said honestly, "Yes. If it wasn't for Zhang, the consequences would be unimaginable." "That's right." Sung Daoren hit the ground with his bamboo stick. His voice suddenly rose a few octaves. "With this person here, Daoren, don't need to embarrass myself. It just so happens that I still have matters to attend to in the Golden Pool. I won't be chatting with you junior brothers. Goodbye, goodbye." He cupped his hands and stood up. He hurriedly stirred up a gust of strong wind and spun out of the hall. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Go Soo-min sighed. She pointed outside the hall and said, "He is also the son of master and the pavilion master of the sect. But how can he be so selfish? He doesn't care about the life and death of the sect's disciples." She then waved her hand and said, "Forget it. We can't count on him." "Junior brother Shin, about that poisonous miasma, what did Zhang said?" Senchu's expression turned serious. He said, "Zhenren said that this poisonous miasma is a mixture of the local poison and a strange poison. But he doesn't know what kind of poison it is. If the junior disciples breathe in a little, if they are not treated, their lives will be in danger within a day or two. Even if we are Yuanian cultivators, after a long time, the poison will infect our bodies and meridians. Even we, the Yuanian cultivators, after a long time, the poison will infect our bodies and meridians. At the moment, he can still find a way to detoxify the poison. But when the time comes, I'm afraid he won't be able to do anything." Go Soo-min was shocked. She said, "This poisonous miasma is so powerful?" Sun Chu said, "This matter can't be faked. There is no need for Zhang to lie to us." Go Soo-min calmed herself down. She said, "It's a pity that Taoist Zhang is not from Quantamin. Oh yes, junior brother, you must think of a way to keep him." Sun Chu nodded. He said, "I will do my best. But the antidote Zhang didn't come from nowhere. It needs to be refined with spiritual medicine. Currently, I don't have much left." Go Soo-min said, "I will do my best in Quantamin. I will give you as much as you have." Quantamin's strength was considered one of the best in Funxiang Sword School. There were 4 Yuanian Zhenren in the school. They occupied 3 immortal cities. Of course, they had the confidence to say this. Shen Chuyu, however, was still in a difficult position. But concocting pills takes time. It would take at least a month to concoct 1 cauldron, and a cauldron would only produce 30 or so pills. There are thousands of disciples in my institute. How could we take care of them all? Go Sumin asked. Junior brother, can you ask Jinren to give up the prescription? After a pause, she added, Quantumin won't take it for nothing. We can exchange it with Dharma treasures and spiritual items. We can even discuss techniques. Before Senchu said anything, the pavilion master sitting on the west side said, Chancellor, this method doesn't solve the root of the problem. If we want to eradicate this poison, we can't touch the seal anymore. Go Sumin said, I have the same intention. But it is the order of the sect. We have to do it. The pavilion master said, then senior brother can move the disciples out. Only the few of us will stay here to guard the place. We don't want to implicate the juniors. Go Sumin frowned. To be honest, he had considered moving the disciples away. But in reality, he couldn't do it. Ever since the seal was broken, to prevent the news from leaking, all the disciples were under the strict supervision of Fengxiang Sword School. None of them could leave as they wished. To prevent them from disobeying, an elder came to check on them every month. The pavilion master said, I have an idea. Since the poison is so poisonous, why don't we exaggerate the number of disciples who died? Every month, when you are not around, we can try to move a few disciples away. Are you going to check on them one by one? Go Sumin thought about it. He was tempted. He asked, then, where can we send those disciples? The pavilion master said, we can try to send them to a few sects we are on good terms with. Before he finished, Go Sumin shook his head. He said, that's not right. If someone reports to the sect in private, the consequences will be dire. Chapter 7:13. Although Sun Chu felt that asking Zhang Boyan to solve this problem was very feasible, whether it would succeed or not still depended on Zhang Boyan's willingness. After coming out of the main hall, he went to the pill room hidden in the belly of the mountain. This place was now lent to Zhang Boyan to concoct pills. When he entered the room, a gust of hot air hit him in the face. Dozens of disciples were sitting in front of the pill furnace, using their mana to ignite the earth fire. Due to the hot air, steam rose from their heads. Zhang Boyan was sitting in a high-hanging hut, controlling everyone's mana to adjust the fire at any time so that the pills wouldn't be damaged. At this moment, when these disciples saw the pavilion master enter, they subconsciously stood up to greet him. Zhang Boyan's expression darkened and he shouted, Who told you to stop? Ever since he arrived, he had taught those who didn't obey his orders a lesson. After interacting with him for so many days, these disciples were already afraid of him. Now that they heard him speak, they all obediently stopped moving. When Sun Chu saw that this furnace of pills had reached a critical juncture, he realized that he came at the wrong time. He didn't dare to disturb them, so he went to the side and waited. About an hour later, the furnace of pills was finished. The dozens of disciples had exhausted their mana, but they still forced themselves to sit up, swallowed spiritual medicine, and meditated to adjust their breathing. Fortunately, they would be able to use their strength again the next time they concocted pills. Even though they were tired by concocting pills here, they could obtain antidote pills in advance. This was better than losing their lives, so no matter how tired they were, no one was willing to leave. Zhang Boyan suppressed the fire and slowly walked down the hanging hut. He ignored Sun Chu and sat on the couch, closing his eyes to adjust his breathing. After another 2 hours, he finished adjusting his breathing and opened his eyes, saying, Fellow Taoist Shin just delivered the spiritual medicine yesterday. Why are you here again today? Sun Chu cupped his hands, saying, I came here today because I have something to trouble you with. Zhang Boyan snorted, saying, That depends on what it is. Shen Chuyu made a hand seal, and a ray of light separated the two of them. Then he told them why he came. He bowed and said, Now, the only one who can save the disciples of Guantan Monastery is you, Dao brother. After Zhang Boyan heard this, he began to plan in his heart. His goal in coming here was to keep an eye on the restrictive spell at all times. If anything happened here, he would be able to notify Zhang Yan in time, and he would be able to cure the poison for his disciples. He didn't expect that Zhang Yan would suddenly ask him to take care of his disciples. He thought to himself, Guantan Yard is a lower sect of the Fengxiang Sword sect. Even if the manor head were to come here, he would need to find an excuse. Since they took the initiative to send their disciples here, this is exactly what I wanted. Seeing him refuse, Sun Chu sighed and said, Zhang, as you can see, my Quantum is suffering from this poison and the lives of my disciples are in danger. Since Zhang Yan took the initiative to send his disciples here, I can't ask for more. Shen Chu sighed and said, Fellow Taoist Zhang, as you can see, my Guantan courtyard is suffering from this poisonous miasma, and the lives of our disciples are in danger. It's not an exaggeration to say that we are in a precarious situation. As long as fellow Taoists can agree to this, you can take whatever we have in our courtyard. Zhang Boyan pretended to be hesitant. After a long time, he said as if he was in a difficult position, It's not that I don't want to help you, but how can I save all of your disciples? Are you going to move all of your disciples to my sect? Sun Chu looked at him with his eyes wide open. After a while, he bowed deeply and said, If it's really possible, my sect will remember your great kindness. Zhang Boyan dodged to the side and sneered, Great kindness? If I help you, Quantumin's crisis will be solved, but Fengxiang Sword School will come looking for me. What's the use of your great kindness? Shen Chu was stunned for a moment before he said, As long as we keep this a secret, who would know that it was fellow Taoist Zhang who did it? If the news is really leaked, he straightened up and said seriously, then you can push this matter to me in Quantum so that you won't be implicated. Zhang Boyan chuckled and said, Words are no proof. We need the monastery head to personally sign the edict. Sun Chu saw that his tone was relaxed and was delighted. Good, good, it should be so. This matter is easy, I will get the edict for you right now. He was afraid that Zhang Boyan would go back on his word, so as soon as he finished speaking, he immediately rushed out. Because he was in such a hurry, he didn't have time to retract the spiritual light he had just set up, so he crashed into it. Zhang Boyan's gaze was deep and a strange smile appeared on his face. As long as he could get the edict, then he would have the status to act in the future. Sun Chu left the alchemy room and hurried to the main hall. At this moment, a disciple ran in anxiously and said, Master, the ambassador from Fengxiang Sword School is here. Sun Chu was shocked and stopped. It's not time yet, why is he here? Did you see who it was? The disciple said, I saw him, it's Shang Junqing, Jinren Shang. Sun Chu's body trembled. Shang Junqing was the sword master of Fengxiang Sword School's absolute light sword. This person was arrogant and unruly, the most difficult to provoke. Furthermore, he loved luxury and beauties. In the past, when it came to this matter, the whole of Quantum was tormented unspeakably. He took a breath and calmed his mind. Where is the ambassador? The disciple said, He has reached the main hall. The chancellor personally went to welcome him. Tell master to quickly go over. Sun Chu's thoughts turned a few times. Since this person was already here, he could only deal with him properly. He walked towards the main hall with apprehension. Not long after, he arrived at the main hall. Just as he entered, he saw that Chancellor Go Su-min and another pavilion master had already arrived. A young cultivator was sitting on the main seat, holding a wine pot and drinking by himself. This person was tall and handsome, but his eyebrows were like sharp swords. When he looked around, he gave off an overbearing and sharp aura. Sun Chu quickly took a few steps forward and bowed. Welcome, ambassador. Shang Junqing's gaze swept over, and he casually threw the wine pot away, saying coldly, Jinren Shen, why are you late? Sun Chu hurriedly said, Just now in the alchemy room refining medicine, I didn't know that ambassador would come. Shang Junqing glanced at both sides again, saying, Where's Zengguizhi? Why don't I see him? Sun Chu said, Senior apprentice brother is refining medicine in the golden pool. Shang Junqing mocked, You are refining medicine, he is also refining medicine. Could it be that Quantum has become the lower house of Ku Xen sect? Sun Chu smiled bitterly, Ambassador, please allow me to report. Recently, there has been a lot of poisonous miasma in the sect, and it has harmed many disciples. I have no choice but to refine medicine to protect myself. Shang Junqing untied the magic sword from his waist and placed it on the table. He said coldly, When I was in the mountain gate, I heard that you and the others made a mistake here, which caused the matter of breaking the prohibition to be delayed. Is this true? Go Sumin cupped his hands and said, Ambassador, there is poisonous miasma under the seal. In just half a month, more than 10 disciples have lost their lives, which is why we have no choice but to do this. I hope that Ambassador will have mercy and forgive us for a month, so that we can save our disciples. Shang Junqing looked at him from the corner of his eyes, saying, Aren't you all refining the antidote? Since there is a good prescription, why stop? Senchu said, Ambassador, you may not know this, but refining a cauldron of pills takes a month, and a cauldron of medicine only. Before he could finish, Shang Junqing interrupted, Don't tell me about this, I don't care what you do. The sect master has ordered that at the end of the year, Quantumin needs to break the seal. If you fail, you will be the one to blame. Having said that, he stood up and walked out. Zhong Tai's celebratory banquet has been set for next month. Chen Yuan wants to attend the banquet personally, and the seal on Quantumin is equally important. Fearing that there is no one watching over this place, it would not be appropriate for there to be any mistakes, so he was sent here to watch over it. As for the disciple's life in Quantumin, if it was Fanning Hui, he might try to buy the disciple's heart, but he did not care at all. It was not a disciple of his sect. If he died, then he died. What does it have to do with him? Looking at his expression, Go Sumin knows that there is no way he can refuse. He can't help but sigh in his heart. Shang Junqing has no intention of helping, which made him even more certain of his previous thoughts, but in reality, he is more worried that Fengxiang Sword School, in order to hide the news, forced Quantumin to this state. If they wait until the seal is broken, who knows what they will do? No matter what, he has to find a way to send the disciple elsewhere. If something happens, it will not be the end of the orthodoxy. Senchu looked outside the hall and set up a seal to isolate the inside from the outside. He then said, Monastery head, little brother Fang Chang has discussed with Zhang Zhang. He has already agreed, but he is afraid that if he helps Quantumin, Fengxiang will be angry at him, so he needs the monastery head to write a letter personally. Go Sumin heard this and her spirit was slightly lifted. She nodded and said, I will write the letter later, but since Shang Junqing is here, this matter needs to be extra careful. In the barren hills west of Dayang City, a golden light flew up, circling around the mountain ridges. A figure flashed below. Chu Changji came out from the cave. With a light beckon, he took it into his hands, opened it and read it. Instantly his face was filled with joy. He turned back to the cave and walked quickly. He said, Teacher, Zhao Ru's letter has arrived. Hui Xian Elder was in the cave residence drinking tea and discussing Dao with Ji Daoren. Seeing him come in, he put down the teacup and took the letter. His eyes lit up when he saw him come in. After a moment of hesitation, he folded the letter and kept it in his sleeve. He then turned to Ji Daoren and said, Zhao Ru said that she has already invited Priest Zhang down the mountain. The banquet will be on the 3rd of next month. At that time, the heads of the 3 sects of South Continent will also come personally. Ji Daoren looked at him and sneered, Let me say this first, I will not fight with Priest Zhang before I get the thing. Hui Xian Elder said in a deep voice, This is what I promised you previously. Naturally I will not go back on it. Moreover, since this person has come out of seclusion, my previous arrangements can also continue. This time after we get the thing in the cave residence, you and I will leave immediately. After that we will find an opportunity to deal with this person. Ji Daoren revealed a satisfied look and said, It is just that Xiao Huanzhuan dared to let you steal this thing. He will not have a backup plan. It is extremely possible that he will burn the bridge after crossing the river. Have you thought of how to deal with him? Hui Xian Old Ancestor chuckled and said, That stratagem was also given by me. How can I not be on guard? Ji Daoren made an oh sound, looked sideways and said, I would like to hear the details. Hui Xian Elder sneered. This time Xiao Huanzhuan invited me to fight. His intention is to clear his name, but how can I do as he wishes? This time I want to call another person along. After the matter, he will definitely be unable to explain himself. Then see how he will deal with the 3 sects of South Continent. When Ji Daoren heard that there was suddenly another person, he unconsciously frowned and looked at him suspiciously, said, Who? Hui Xian Elder faintly said, Xiao Huanzhuan's concubine, Lian Murong. Chapter 7:14. On the 3rd day of the 9th month, The Zhongtai sect held a banquet at the southwest dragon pillar, inviting the Dongxing sections. After the Ku-Xian sect received the invitation, the sect leader, He Zhu, selected over 100 disciples and elders. They boarded the flying disc cloud boat and departed from the Wu kingdom in the southwest, heading north. After 20 days, they arrived at the side of the raging Great Chuan River. The Great Chuan River flowed from west to east, intersecting with the other 4 great rivers at the midstream umbilicus. Together, they were known as the 5 Dragon Rivers. Its shape was just like the word great, dividing the Dongxing continent into 5, and the world structure was thus formed. The water of the Dachuan River flowed rapidly. In the middle of the river, there were black reefs densely covering the entire river. If one looked closely, they would be able to tell that they weren't rocks, but huge, strange turtles. They stood at the bottom of the river, their bodies like millstones. Only their black shells were exposed to the surface of the river, absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon. There were thousands of them. Among them, there were 10 of them that were especially huge. When they raised their heads, they were almost as big as a mountain. They were facing the sun and spitting out smoke. An elder who was leading the way raised his hand and signaled for them to stop. He cautiously said, "Disciples behind, be careful. Follow the elders when crossing the river. Don't become food for the monster turtles." Everyone agreed in unison. These monster turtles usually lived in the river. As long as there were cultivators crossing the river, they would try to swallow them. Other than the Yuanian cultivators who could travel above the sky and hide from them, the rest could only cross the river during the 2 to 4 hours when the turtles entered the water to rest. Even so, if they weren't careful, they would still be killed. It wasn't that the 5 sects didn't want to eliminate them, but it wasn't in their territory after all. The cultivators who went there didn't have the heart to help. Moreover, the monster turtles' shells were sturdy. Normal weapons couldn't break them. Even if they couldn't defeat the cultivators, they could hide deep in the river. Normal methods couldn't take them. The 10 monster turtles were even more powerful. They could almost fight with the Yuanian cultivators. The people of the Ku-Xian sect didn't want to provoke them, so they carefully avoided them. It took them half a day to cross the river just now. As soon as they reached the other side of the river, a disciple pointed downwards and said, "There are already Zhongtai disciples waiting by the river." "Oh," the leading elder replied. He said, unexpectedly he came all the way to the riverbank. Sect leader Qiao is very considerate. At first, he didn't think much of it, but after traveling for another 10 days, he was moved. In the past few days, they had traveled tens of thousands of miles, but there was only one pavilion every 10 miles. There was a jug of wine every 100 li. A hill of 1,000 li. Every 1,000 li, there would be 1,000 pearls piled up into a pagoda on top of the hill. It gave off a dazzling radiance. On the 2 sides of the path, there were golden boats sailing from time to time. On every single boat, there were beautiful maidservants in colorful clothes standing at the bow of the boat, pouring water and wine into the dry ditches to converge into a river. There were also demon carps with pearls in their mouths, swimming leisurely. From time to time, a maidservant would throw down bait and swallow it. The pearls in their stomachs would shine, and stars would be faintly discernible in the transparent water. At night, the ground would shine, and the water would be like a river of stars. It really made the mountains and rivers look beautiful, and the scenery was endless. The disciples of the Ku-Xian sect were all astonished. From here to the southwest dragon pillar, there were at least 10,000 miles of land. If all the roads along the way were decorated like this, a rough calculation would take up at least 20 to 30 immortal cities. The number of immortal cities owned by each of the 3 major sects of the South Continent was about the same. However, Zhongtai was different. After obtaining the wealth of Xianyu sect, they had close to 100 celestial cities in their hands. Although they had to pay a lot, it wasn't a huge blow. It could be said that they were very powerful. Thinking about this, everyone felt their hearts tremble. The elder looked at it and frowned. After thinking for a while, he flew towards a jade plate in the sky that was a few miles wide. This plate was called the 4 Seas Jade Plate. There were mountains and water on the plate, forming a beautiful and blessed land. The sect master, He Zhu, was lying on a green peak. He looked to be around 40 years old. He wore a deep robe and a wide belt, and his sleeves were spread out like wings. His entire person was restrained, and his essence was restrained. He looked ordinary. Other than the clothes on his body, he didn't look like a cultivator. After the elder arrived, he explained the situation below and cupped his hands. Sect Master, Zhongtai has clearly set up such a formation for us to see. It's not without the intention of showing off. When He Zhu heard the report, he smiled and said, "The formation is indeed not small. If they do this, won't they have to send out thousands of disciples? Is there no one left in Zhongtai sect?" He changed his mind and waved his hand to call a disciple over. He said, "Go and find out where those people came from." The disciple took the order and left. Not long after, he turned back and said, "Sect Master, I have already asked. Most of the people below were originally from Xianyu sect. This welcoming and sending off is mostly done by them." He Zhu smiled and said to the dozen disciples on both sides, "When I came here, I have said that these two sects have been at odds for thousands of years. Although they are now one, how can the hatred that has accumulated for thousands of years be eliminated so easily? Now Zhongtai sect seems to be strong, but it's actually filled with hidden problems. It's like a 1,000-year-old tree that looks thick and strong, but it's actually big and empty. There's nothing to be afraid of." The disciples all nodded in agreement. The elder didn't say anything, but he understood that these words were just to boost the morale of his own sect. In Dongsheng continent, if a sect had a heavenly abode master, it would be able to stand tall. There were only two key factors to evaluate whether the sect was strong or not. One was the size of the celestial city, and the other was the techniques and supernatural powers. The orthodoxy of Zhongtai was passed down by the great master Dami. Even though the great master only served a boy by his side and did not inherit the teachings completely, it was still much better than the other sections. The only one in the continent that could compare to it was the Shao Tsongjing. Now that Zhongtai obtained Xianyu's techniques, who knew what it would become in a few hundred years? The reason why the three sects wanted to get their hands on the dragon pillar wasn't entirely because of the hidden treasure below. It was because they heard that there was a personal letter from Grand Master Dami inside. If Zhongtai obtained it and created a heavenly abode master, it would be able to maintain its prosperity for another 2,000 years. If there were no accidents, it would definitely be able to suppress the three sects of the South Continent. Therefore, they tried to prevent it from succeeding. At this moment, a disciple came up and cupped his fists. "Sect Master, there are about 10 people approaching us from behind. They seem to be the cultivators from Qing Xian sect." He Zhu smiled. "Mao Daoren is here too?" He patted lightly and the jade couch under him flew up. In the blink of an eye, he was outside. He looked up and saw that there was a group of people coming from more than 10 miles away. The person at the front was wearing an 8-beam crown, an elm robe, and a pair of green cloud shoes. His facial features were squeezed together, making him look funny. He was riding on a large sparrow with flower feathers. It was Mao Wei, the sect master of Qing Xian sect. Behind him were the three sages of the sect, Jinren Qing, Jinren Shancheng, and Jinren Chunbai. Their clothes were full of stains as if they hadn't been washed for many years. They were all riding on a bald dove. Including the accompanying disciples, there were only about 10 people. They all looked listless and extremely shabby. Compared to Ku Xen sect, it was a tragic sight. He Zhu looked at this scene and couldn't help but laugh. He said from afar, "Sect Master Mao, I didn't want to meet you here. My place is spacious and can accommodate a few more people. It can also shelter me from the wind and rain. Why don't you come up and join us?" There was a hint of ridicule in his words, but Mao Wei exclaimed and said, "Since He Zhangmen is so kind, Daoren will be thick-skinned for once." Although he said so, he didn't look embarrassed at all. The three Jinren behind him also gladly followed. The cultivators of Qing Xian sect never cared about face and etiquette. They only cared about practical benefits. Since they could save their own energy, why not? These people came up to the jade plate together. Mao Wei was the first to land. After he came down, the large sparrow flapped its wings and turned into a beautiful woman with red makeup. She seemed to be a little shy. She lowered her head and followed him step by step. Hiju waved her sleeves and ordered the disciples to go and greet them. After Mao Wei sat down, he saw a lot of delicacies and wine on the table. He didn't care about his status as the head of the sect. He grabbed a big goose covered in honey and took a big bite. After a few bites, he raised his head and stared at the disciples next to him. He said vaguely, "What are you waiting for? If you're fast, you'll get it. If you're slow, you won't get it. If you don't act now, it'll all benefit me, Daoren." When the three elders heard what he said, they fought to be the first to sit down. It was as if they were afraid that he would finish eating, so they started to wolf down the food. The disciples behind them also followed suit. The disciples of the Ku Xen sect were all stunned. Hiju said sarcastically, "Sect Master Mao, your Taoist robe is so fresh. Don't tell me you just changed?" Mao Wei laughed and slapped the table. He said to the three elders behind him, "Daoren, how was it? How was it? I knew He Zhongmen would ask this question. Give me the money, give me the money." The three Zenrins looked at each other speechlessly. They each took out a box of spiritual shells from their sleeves and obediently handed it to Mao Wei. However, when it was the pure white Shinrin's turn, he looked very pained. He said with a sad face, "Senior Marshal Brother, can you leave some for me to use as money for my coffin?" Mao Wei sneered. He stretched out his hand and mercilessly snatched the box. Then he wiped his mouth and said to Hiju proudly, "I'll let He Zhongmen know that Doran's robe isn't new." He took off his robe and opened it, revealing a thick layer of grease. He fanned himself a few times, and there was a fishy smell that made people cover their noses. He laughed and said, "How is it? It's just a change of inside and outside. It's still the same robe that you and I wore when we played chess 30 years ago. He Zhongmen didn't expect this, right?" Hiju's expression was slightly stiff. At this moment, he secretly regretted that he knew Doran's temperament, but he still invited him up. He really deserved it. The people from the Qing Xian sect ate for a whole day and night. They ate until the table was filled with a mountain of food. Only then did they slow down. Mao Wei rubbed his belly with satisfaction, which hadn't changed much. He glanced around and saw a disciple who was still eating. He went up to him and gave him a slap. He said resentfully, "Eat. With your cultivation, how much can you eat? This is just a cushion. There will be a big feast later. Don't eat too much." Only then did the disciple put down the plate reluctantly. Hiju saw that they stopped and was finally relieved. He coughed and said, "It's already so late, why don't I see sect leader Chen? I wonder if sect leader Mao saw him when he came?" Mao Wei burped and took a bamboo stick over. He picked his teeth and said, "Fellow Taoist, don't forget that Madame Zhao graduated from Fengxiang Sword School. The two families are old friends. I'm afraid she has already arrived one step ahead of us." Hiju's heart suddenly tightened when he heard this news. They said that they were going to attend the feast, but in fact it was about the dragon pillar. If the three families advanced and retreated together, it would be fine. They could most likely force Zhongtai to give in. However, if they were roped in by one family, it would be bad. Chapter 7:15. Ku Xian and Qing Xian schools cultivators traveled together for another 10 days. They were now only 1,000 miles away from the venue of the congratulatory banquet. When they arrived, they heard the sound of drums and music. They all looked down, but all they saw was a sea of clouds, and they couldn't see through it. Hiju stood on the jade plate of the four seas and cast his gaze downwards, but to no avail. He laughed mockingly and said, "So secretive, deliberately mystifying." As he spoke, he waved his sleeves and released a gust of strong wind, intending to disperse the clouds. However, the result of this technique shocked him. Although the cloud was swept away by him, it closed up and returned to its original state. He frowned slightly. Such a scene was not the result of any Taoist technique or supernatural power. If it wasn't a restrictive array, then it was the use of some strange treasure. Mao Wei came to his side, looked at it and said, "I heard that Xianyu School has a treasure called the Three Mountains Qi Suppressing Tablet. This treasure can change the weather. Maybe it's this." He Zhu agreed, "That makes sense." Xian Yu was defeated, so this treasure should be in Zhong Tai's hands. Perhaps the commotion just now had alarmed the people inside. The clouds and mist suddenly parted in all directions, and a flying boat flew out from within. Zhong Tai Elder Bai stood at the bow of the boat and bowed to the two from afar. He said with a smile, "Forgive me, sect leaders. My sect leader should be the one to welcome the two of you personally. However, an esteemed guest has arrived and I can't leave at the moment, so I can only come here." When He Yizhu heard this, he was instantly displeased. Both of them were respected elders of a sect, and each of their statuses were not below Qiao Huanzhuan's. Not to mention that both of them had come together, but now they had only sent one elder, which was extremely rude. He said coldly, "I'd like to ask who has such a great reputation to have sect leader Qiao personally accompany them." Elder Bai smiled. "Who else can it be? It's naturally sect leader Qin of Fengxiang Sword School." He Yizhu sneered, "Brother Mao, it seems like you have guessed correctly." Mao Wei looked confused and asked, "What did I expect?" He Yizhu saw that he was pretending to be confused, and scolded him in his heart. Elder Bai acted as if he didn't notice his dissatisfaction. He cupped his hands and said, "Please follow me." He Yizhu went back to drive the Four Seas jade plate, and followed him into the Sea of Clouds. After traveling for a few miles, the view in front of him opened up. The sky was high and the clouds were low. Below them was a curtain that covered the mountains and earth. Every time it swayed, there would be layers of spiritual light and astral winds dancing. At a glance, it seemed like it would cover an area of several thousand miles. This. Yizhu was shocked. This. Mao Wei's listless look disappeared at once. He looked down thoughtfully. Elder Bai smiled and pointed down. "This is the Victory Song flag. After our sect destroyed Xianyu, we seized 47 celestial cities and obtained more than 10,000 formation flags. This treasure was made from them, and it can be separated or combined, and it can be big or small. It can cover the ground as a blanket, and it can be small as a handkerchief." However, after Madame held it in her hands, she felt that it was not stylish enough, so she used 10-direction brocade cloud silk, heart jade sea flower, and longevity golden auspicious knot. She instructed thousands of female disciples to work together and weaved it on the moon-treading loom for 20 years, and finally it became what it is today. He Yizhu and Mao Wei couldn't help but look at each other. The materials that Elder Bai had mentioned were originally meant to be used to make Taoist robes for cultivators, but now they were used to refine this banner. Seeing this, the two of them were inwardly shocked. They couldn't help but wonder how much benefit Zhong Tai had obtained from the Xianyu sect. When Rong Jun reincarnated, he originally wanted to hand over the sect's treasury to Jinren He, so that Zhong Tai couldn't take it. However, things were unpredictable. After Yang Shuyong surrendered to Zhong Tai, he gave the treasury to Zhong Tai in exchange for sparing his life. This was not the one that Zhang Yan moved away. Xian Yu's thousands of years of savings were all inside. After obtaining this treasury, Zhong Tai had the confidence to do all kinds of extravagant things. After Mao Wei looked down a few times, he suddenly shook his head and said, "This treasure takes up thousands of miles. It's not that I'm looking down on Brother Qiao's ability, but with his cultivation he wouldn't be able to make it no matter what. Not only him, in Zhong Tai sect, no cultivator of this generation has this ability. There should be another expert who helped him." Elder Bai laughed and said, "Sect leader Mao is still the one who sees things clearly. I'll just say it." He paused for a while, then said solemnly, "To be honest, when I was making this treasure, I received some pointers from Jinren Zheng." Hearing this, both of them had different reactions. Mao Wei lowered his head and revealed a look of contemplation, while He Yizhu's expression changed. She thought to herself, could it be as Jinren Hang said, that Zhong Tai obtained some method of prolonging life passed down by Grand Master Daimu? One could not blame him for thinking this way. Jing Weixing and He Li, the two Dongtian Jinren, had lived for 3,000 years and were at the end of their lifespan. However, 20 years ago, just after the Dragon Pillar ceremony, when the Dongtian Jinren in the sect looked at the qi, they saw that the qi activity in Zhong Tai's direction, which was showing signs of weakening, had become strong again. Looking at the sign, It would have at least another few hundred years of fate energy. On the other hand, He Li's place was like a dying mountain, completely dissipating after a few years. Before coming to this congratulatory banquet, he thought it was not bad to join forces with Fengxiang, Qingxian, and the three sects to pressure Zhong Tai. Even if they could not stop him from taking away the Taoist book from the netherworld, they would at least want a share of it. However, when he came here, he realized that Zhong Tai was far more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. Especially Qin Yuan, he did not know what he was planning. If the three sects failed to join forces, how could Ku Xian and Qingxian sects lower their heads to this sect? While he was thinking, Mao Wui's voice came to his ears. If Qiao Huanzhuan could convince Qin Yuan, why would he need to put up such a show? This time, he purposely treated the two of us unfairly and showed respect to Qin Yuan. He's just trying to plant a thorn in our three sects, secretly trying to sow discord. Fellow Taoist, you should just ignore such despicable methods. Tiju snorted softly. What he said made some sense, but the three sects each had their own selfish motives and were never a monolithic block. Qin Yuan also knew Qiao Huanzhuan's purpose, but not only did he not decline, he even went forward gladly. There might be some reason behind this, it was just that he did not know about it. After everyone moved forward for a moment, Elder Bai Daoren said, "We're here." He took out a jade token and waved it. The victory song gate below opened a circular opening that allowed everyone to pass through. Then, he turned back to call out to them and led the way in. The cultivators of the two sects followed him. After going down to the inner room, they first saw a jade-like blue lake and three towering mountains surrounding it in a triangular formation. On the north mountain, there was a golden jade platform that was 1,000 feet high. It was bright and dazzling, as if another golden bell platform had been built here. Elder Bai pointed to one of the mountains and said, "Please look, this mountain is the one that was moved away by Zhenren Zhang during the fight." When he and Mao heard this, they looked at it a few more times. The details of the Dragon Pillar fight, the two of them had already tried to find out. But after all, hearing is not as good as seeing it with their own eyes. Now that they saw this mountain towering in front of them, their hearts were in awe. How strong did the power have to be able to move it away? Elder Bai looked at the two of them and smiled to himself. He knew that he had achieved his goal. He said, Sect Leader Shixiang is waiting for you on the treasure platform, please move your jade toes." Both of them nodded their heads and landed on the main hall below them. After a while, they arrived at the empty space in front of the hall. There were people coming to greet the junior disciples. Rows of maids dressed in feather clothes came out to greet them. They sprinkled water and spread flowers. There were also disciples opening the way in front of them with bead lanterns. There was even the sound of flute and drum music lingering in their ears. After passing through two halls, they arrived at a golden hall. There were two people sitting at the highest point. Zhong Tai sect leader Qiao Huanzhuan sat on the highest seat. Beside him was a person wearing black clothes and a black crown. He looked extremely strict. It was Fengxiang Sword School leader Qin Yuan. At this moment, the two of them looked like old friends who had not seen each other for many years. They were talking and laughing happily. He turned his gaze again and saw that Elder Yen was greeting a white-haired old Taoist at another table not far away. The old Taoist looked to be quite old, so he thought he was another sect head. He pointed and asked, "May I know who that person is?" Elder Bai took a look and said, "His name is Zheng Zonglun. Perhaps the two of you don't know his name. But if I were to mention his Shixiang Lu Gongnan, I'm sure you have heard of him?" Mao Wei nodded and said, "The Book of Stargazing." Elder Bai Daoren said, "Yes." Zheng Zonglun was also treated as a distinguished guest because of the Book of Stargazing. However, his hair was now white, and he was not as spirited as he was a few decades ago. Mao Wei smiled and said, "I heard that this book seeks luck and avoids calamity. Even in a dangerous situation, it can find a way out. It's really a rare treasure." Zhong Tai was able to turn misfortune into fortune this time and turn misfortune into fortune. I guess it's because of the help of this treasure? Elder Bai smiled but did not answer. He turned to the hall and said, "Sect leader, I have already welcomed the leaders of Ku Xian School and Qingxian School." Sect leader Qiao seemed to have just noticed the two of them. He looked happy and stood up. He said, "So it's the two leaders. Please come and take a seat." As he said this, he came down from the stage. He and Mao Wei repeatedly said that they did not dare to. After exchanging some pleasantries, they went up to the hall and sat down. Just now, before they could say anything, a disciple hurried in from the outer hall and said, Sect leader Zhang of Shenwu Mountain's Hanyuan School has arrived." Sect leader Qiao suddenly stood up and said, "Let me personally go and welcome him." He then turned to Elder Bai and said, "Junior apprentice brother, please greet the three leaders on my behalf." As he said this, he cupped his hands and bowed. He then quickly walked down the stairs and out of the hall. He and Mao Wei looked at each other. Before the Battle of the Dragon Pillars, the reason why Zhongtai was able to suppress Xian Yu was because of this person's help. This kind of behavior was probably done on purpose to show the closeness between the two schools. Chen Yuan stroked his beard and said, "Both of you, I have long heard of this person's reputation. Why don't we go and see what kind of person this Taoist Zhang is?" He Zhu said, "That's fine too." Mao Wei also said, "That's what I was thinking." The three of them walked out of the hall together. When they arrived at the main entrance, they felt a surge of spiritual energy in the sky. When they looked up, they saw a towering palace that was hundreds of feet in size suspended in midair. It had golden pillars and jade steps, and the roof tiles were flowing with light. On the four corners of the palace, auspicious clouds were like wings, fluttering and spreading, and there was a rumbling sound of thunder. Then, they saw the palace door open, and a warm light flew down. On top of it, more than 100 figures appeared. Chapter 716. As soon as the hundreds of cultivators appeared, the entire golden platform went silent. At this moment, there were already more than 10,000 cultivators who had rushed over from all directions to attend the banquet gathered below the stage. Seeing that the person who came this time was actually able to cause the sect leader of Zhongtai to personally come out to welcome him, most of them had already guessed who the person who came was. They all stared at the sky without blinking, wanting to see what the rumored person looked like. He Zhu cast her gaze over and saw that the person in front was a young Taoist in a black robe. He had an imposing appearance and his eyes were filled with divine light. Around him, spiritual waves surged and surged. The heavenly cloud above his head suddenly separated and closed, gathering and dispersing. It was extremely strange. He Zhu's expression turned cold and thought to himself, "Looks like this Taoist Zhang will be able to enter the third-degree realm in another 100 years. With this person helping Zhongtai from the back, I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to gain an advantage on the dragon pillar this time." Thinking about this, he couldn't help but worry. If this person joined forces with Zhongtai, it would be a great threat to the three sects of the south. He couldn't help but think about how to move them away. After Qin Yuan looked at Zhang Yan a few times, his gaze landed on the two girls behind him who looked similar. He saw that the two girls were as beautiful as jade, their skin was as white as snow, and their talent was excellent. Like Fanning Hui, he sighed and said, "This Taoist Zhang has two good disciples." This time, because Zhongtai invited the sects of Dongxing, Zhang Yan didn't go alone. The leaders of the 36 sects of Shenwu Mountain also came with him. As his personal disciples, the Wang sisters also came along out of courtesy. They were originally citizens of the 9 cities. Since their ancestors lived in the Qinsong school, they had been nourished by the spirit lake since they were young. Their talent was naturally not something ordinary people could compare to. When Zhang Yan came out of the lofty cloud tower, he looked around and waved his sleeves. A light gushed out from under his feet and he floated down. Sect leader Qiao quickly walked up and cupped his hands, saying, "Sect leader Zhang, everyone in Zhongtai has been waiting for you for a long time." Zhang Yan smiled and returned the greeting. He said politely, "My Hanyuan is just a small remote sect. I can't accept such a big gift." Sect leader Qiao hastily said, I am worthy, I am worthy." While the two were talking, they heard a voice. "Taoist Zhang, may I ask what the heavenly palace is? Where did you get it?" Zhang Yan looked in the direction of the sound. He saw that the person who spoke was ordinary. There was nothing special about it. But on top of it were the 3 spiritual clouds, like leaves, not exposed. He asked, "May I know how to address this Taoist?" Qiao Huanzhuan stretched out her hand and gestured, saying with a smile, "Come, come, let me introduce you to Zhenren. This is Ku Xen Sect's sect master, Zhenren He." "So it's he Zhangmen." Zhang Yan raised his hand and bowed, then smiled and said, "Let me introduce He Zhang. This item is called the Towering Cloud Palace. It can be used for walking and can also be used as a cultivation abode. It was made by a capable person from my sect." He Yizhu raised her eyebrows and said, "As far as I know, the person who can make this treasure must have his own means, and he must have used an earth-fire heavenly furnace. Among the 4 big sects of Dongxing, we don't have such a place. Zhenren Zhang is being modest by calling himself a small sect." Mao Wei said, "He Zhang, have you forgotten that Zhenren Zhang and Zhenren Shen Baishuang came from the same sect? Zhenren Shen established his sect in Dongxing, and it has been hundreds of years since then. He should be considered a cultivator of Dongxing." He Zhu pretended to be unhappy and said, "Brother Qiao, you're wrong. The Python tribe has also established a foothold in the Northern Sea realm. Are they also cultivators of Dongxing?" Seeing the 2 of them echoing each other, they pointed out that Zhang Yan's background was not simple and that he was not a cultivator of this continent, so he should not be easily trusted. In particular, they deliberately spoke loudly so that the cultivators below the stage could also hear them. Their intentions were self-evident. Sect leader Qiao frowned at first, then relaxed and said in a slightly cold voice, "Demons are demons, humans are humans. How can I not distinguish between here and the outside? Han Yuan is also a cultivator of the Xianmen Dao, not a demon or a different species. Sect leaders, you're worrying too much." At this time, Zhang Yan laughed and said, "According to what I know, in the past 10,000 years, there have only been 2 patriarchs in the Dongxing continent. One was Patriarch Dharma. After he ascended, he left behind the Zhongtai and Xianyu sects. The other was Patriarch Jingcang, who founded the Shaotsung realm. As for the other major sects, they all came from other continents. In detail, I, Han Yuan, am not one step behind them." He Yizhu's expression froze. If they were to talk about the root cause, it was true that the 2 sects that Zhang Yan mentioned were natives of Dongxing. As for the cultivators of these 3 sects, they all crossed the sea from the Donglai continent thousands of years ago, and then occupied the mountains to establish their sections. If they were to think about it carefully, they could not be considered to be from this continent. Even the evil sects that had been destroyed long ago were established much earlier than the 3 sections. But it was also because of this that the 3 sects were even more vigilant against people from other continents. Seeing that the situation was slightly tense, Chen Yuan, who had not spoken all this while, spoke. "Sect head Qiao is right. Since we are all Xian sect disciples, why is there a need to distinguish who is close or who is distant? He Zhangmen, don't you think so?" He Zhu could not see through what Chen Yuan was planning. But since things had come to this point, it was not good to continue pestering him. She reluctantly nodded and said, "Sect head Chen is right." Sect head Qiao laughed loudly. The unhappiness on his face was swept away. He said, "It is rare that the leaders of the 4 major sects are gathered here. We should drink to our heart's content. There is no need to talk about these minor details. Everyone, follow me to the banquet." While everyone was drinking, Elder Hui Xian and Ji Daoren had already arrived outside the southwest dragon pillar. The Yuanian cultivators of Zhongtai sect had all gone to the banquet. There were only a few disciples here, so naturally they could not stop the 2 of them. The 2 rays of light circled a few times in front of the dragon pillar. Just in front of a stone cave surrounded by broken stones, Ji Daoren revealed himself. He looked at the ground. There was a pit that had long been cleaned out. It was dark and bottomless. An indescribable expression surfaced in his eyes. But he was not in a hurry to go down. Instead, he looked back at the victory song flag floating in the sky and said sarcastically, "Fellow Taoist Hui Xian, it seems that Zhongtai is indeed worried about you." Sect head Qiao had placed the victory song flag here not only to intimidate the cultivators of the 3 sects, but also for another purpose. According to the previous plan, no matter what Hui Xian got, he had to leave it behind while he would escape far away and pretend to steal the book. And if he had other intentions and did not act according to the previous plan, then this treasure flag would stop him. Before long, many Zhongtai sect cultivators would rush over. Hui Xian old ancestor said indifferently, "How would I not know what Xiao Huanzhuan is planning? I have already expected it." Ji Daoren asked, "In that case, fellow Taoist should have a way to solve it?" Hui Xian old ancestor said in a deep voice, "This is very easy. After getting the Taoist book, if someone comes to receive us, there is no harm in handing it over. Once the flag door is opened, we can try to get it back. Moreover, he would definitely not think that there is still fellow Taoist here. With the two of us working together, even if Du Shixuan came personally, it would also be useless." Ji Daoren was stunned. He did not think that the method was so simple. But thinking again, it was not a bad method. Xiao Huanzhuan had made so many arrangements, he would definitely not let them leave. As long as the flag array was opened, it would be much easier. But he still had a question. He said, "This place is only 300 miles away from the place of the banquet. I heard that Taoist Zhang is skilled in the sword escape technique. In no time he would be able to catch up with us. Does fellow Taoist have a way to deal with him?" Hui Xian old ancestor said expressionlessly, "My disciple will naturally bring up the rear for us." Taoist Ji glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. Then he suddenly smiled and said, "Good. Those who want to achieve great things don't bother with trifles. So what if I give up a disciple? I'll just find another one in the future. However, have you thought about where you'll go after this is done?" The location of Zhong Tai's banquet this time was very particular. It happened to be on the east side of the Dragon Pillar. This meant that after they succeeded, they could only choose from the north, south and west. And the north was the Xinwu Mountain. Now it was sealed by the Cold Abyss sect. If they wanted to go there, they could only escape from the extreme heaven. But he was not willing to do so. Although the escape to the extreme heaven was unobstructed, it was also unconcealed and would be easily detected by cultivators of the same cultivation. And according to what he knew, there were at least 3 Yuanying hangers-on in the Xinwu Mountain. Especially one of them had strange Dao techniques and high attainments in escape techniques. He might not be able to win against them. With the help of the escape formation, it was not impossible to delay them for a while. That would be enough for Zhang Yan to catch up. As for the south, that was the land of the 3 sects of the south. If they went there, the 3 sects would not let them off and they could not go either. So there was only one choice left. Hui Xian old ancestor said in a deep voice, "Head to the west." Ji Daoren stared at him and said, "Have you thought it through? The west is an important place for Zhong Tai." Hui Xian old ancestor said calmly, "Those who have some cultivation in Zhong Tai are all at the banquet. As long as we do not head to Hope Voice Mountain, there is nothing that can threaten the two of us." "Then what next? Where should we go?" Hui Xian old ancestor seemed to have a card up his sleeve and said confidently, "The two of us will not stop and head to the West Sea. When we reach the West GC boundary, we will pretend to go around to the north. Since Xiao Huanzhuan knows about my relationship with the Python tribe, she will definitely think that I will go to the Python tribe to seek shelter. Most likely she will send people to intercept us in the north and I will do the opposite." Ji Daoren's heart moved and he said, "Head to the south?" Hui Xian old ancestor nodded and said, "That's right. I think fellow Taoist has also thought of it. We will go around the South Vast Sea from the West GC and finally head to the East Vast Sea. There is a 1,000 islands reef that can go straight to Shaotsong State. As long as we can hide in there, no matter how the 4 sects search, they will not be able to find us. Shaotsong State, Shaotsong State." Ji Daoren murmured it twice. For thousands of years, although many people entered Shaotsong State, but no one knew where the Real Mountain Gate was. After all, this state formed its own world, and it was left behind by an ascended Zhenren. At least in Dongxing State, no one was able to find it. He could not help but look over and said, "I did not think that Taoist Hui Xian has such ability to even be able to persuade the master of Shaotsong State." Hui Xian old ancestor said, the demi calligraphy, who does not wish to have a look? Ji Daoren smiled mysteriously, the demi calligraphy? He shook his head and with a leap, he landed into the hole on the ground and disappeared in a blink of an eye. Hui Xian old ancestor frowned and thought for a moment. He first scanned the surroundings and then turned his mana and turned into a beam of light that shot downwards. Chapter 717. After Hui Xian old ancestor entered the hole, he reached the end of the hole after a short while. He raised his head and saw a bottomless tunnel in front of him. His gaze swept over but did not see Ji Daoren's figure. He thought that he had gone in first, thus he did not stop and charged in with the astral wind. This hole was 100 feet deep and there was no obstruction in flying, but the path was winding and snake-like. There were depressions everywhere and the water was a foot high. The stalagmites were like a forest, clustered together, as if thousands of swords were hanging above. There was a baleful aura floating back and forth, with killing intent hidden in every step. However, most of the restrictions here had already dissipated, and even the remnants were removed by the Zhongtai disciples who came here previously, thus there was no need to care. After traveling for a short while, his figure paused as two forks appeared in front of him. On the left, a gust of wind came from within, blowing onto his body, chilling him to the bone. On the right, there seemed to be a surging underground river. From time to time there would be sounds of rocks striking. It was noisy to the ears. It seemed like the water flow was very rapid. His gaze swept back and forth before raising his hand to draw a stream of energy over, trying to determine where Ji Daoren was going. However, after casting the spell for a long time, he did not get any clues, not knowing if he purposely hid it or if the energy here was chaotic. He thought for a while on the spot before flying towards the left-hand hole. Along the way, a gust of cold wind blew over. Even with his cultivation he was shaky. He was not surprised and immediately made a spell. Just now he was able to stabilize himself. After traveling for about an hour, not knowing how deep he was underground, the wind around him slowly calmed down. Not far away a spacious cave hall came into view. Out of caution, he landed a few feet off the ground, floating in the air. After traveling for 100 feet, he was already inside the cave. At this moment he suddenly stopped and raised his head to take a look. He saw a floating platform about 70 feet up. Ji Daoren had his back facing him, standing alone on top. He was holding a pearl in his hand, shining it back and forth, as if he was looking for something. Hui Xian old ancestor jumped up and said with a slightly unhappy tone, Dao brother Ji made it hard for me to find. Ji Daoren did not even turn back. He waved at him and pointed to the front. Fellow Taoist Hui Xian, please come up and take a look. Hui Xian old forefather thought that he had found something and took a few steps forward. He looked down and saw that there was a stone niche a few feet in front of him. A skinny silver-robed Taoist was sitting inside. His eyes were closed, and it was obvious that he was a corpse. He frowned. Then, as if he sensed something, he looked towards the two directions and a look of shock appeared on his face. The entire cavern was actually filled with such shrines. There were tens of thousands of them, and each of them had a person sitting in it. After looking around, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He asked in bewilderment, "Who are these people? Why are they here?" Ji Daoren didn't answer. He just stretched out his hand and pulled a talisman from the Taoist's waist. He weighed it in his palm and handed it over. That corpse had experienced countless years and was already decaying. Now that it was tossed around like that, it immediately turned into a pile of dust. Hui Xian old ancestor took a look and frowned. Spirit returning sect? What sect is this? Is there such a sect in our Dongxing state? Ji Daoren said faintly, close to 10,000 years ago. Spirit returning sect was the #1 sect in our Dongxing state and dominated half of the continent. At that time, our Fuyang sect, Corpse Cult and Mangluo Palace were just 3 small sects under them. It was the first time Hui Xian old ancestor heard such a saying. He lowered his head and thought for a while before asking in puzzlement. According to what Dao Brother said, this sect should be extremely powerful and there must be records of it in the ancient books. But why have I never heard of it? Ji Daoren sneered. It is not strange that Dao friend never heard of it. That is because someone purposely covered it up. Who did this? Ji Daoren laughed coldly. In our Dongxing state, other than Great Master Dami, who else could do this? Hui Xian old ancestor could not help but look surprised. Ji Daoren folded his sleeves and said slowly, Great Master Dami had remarkable abilities, but his abilities did not come out of nowhere. There are rumors that he was originally a disciple of this spirit-returning sect, but for some reason he had enmity with his sect and went to another continent to avoid trouble. After his cultivation was successful, he came back and fought with spirit-returning sect for hundreds of years using his remarkable abilities and Dao techniques. A number of heavenly abodes of this sect died in his hands, and since then they have not been able to recover. Hui Xian old ancestor's eyes lit up when he heard this and clapped his hands, praising, to be able to defeat a sect alone, senior's grace and elegance really fascinates us. He cupped his hands together. May I ask Dao brother, what happened after that? Ji Daoren said coldly, although spirit-returning sect was forced to such a state, they were still able to hide in the mountain and struggle on while at death's door because they still have a magical treasure called 9 Huang Star Pearl. There are a total of 9 of these treasures, and when they are shot out together, the wind and clouds change color, tsunami and mountains collapse. Even Dami did not dare to face it head-on. It was just that he borrowed a powerful magical treasure from somewhere and arranged a fight with spirit-returning sect head Beima on the sea. In the end, both of them were injured, and when he recovered, he then found out that spirit-returning sect head was already dead. In order to protect himself, his disciple followed his orders and hid under this dragon pillar, giving up the entire Dongxing state. Hui Xian old ancestor looked left and right, pointed and said, Look at the people here, they are all emaciated, their eyes sunken and cheeks withered, they should have died due to the exhaustion of their vitality. Daoist Ji chuckled and said, You are right. The spirit-returning sect thought that by hiding underground, they would be able to avoid annihilation, but they were wrong. Demi was not willing to let the matter rest. After hearing about this, he spent 100 years to set up a seal around the dragon pillar. He also used his mana to cut off the spiritual opportunity of the earth meridians within a radius of 10,000 miles, so that none of the tens of thousands of spirit-returning sect disciples and elders could escape. In the end, they were buried here. Hui Xian old ancestor nodded unconsciously and said, That is how it should be. To cut the weeds, one must remove the roots. If Master Dami did not do this, after he ascended, spirit-returning sect would definitely come out to take revenge on his younger disciples once their vitality recovered. Ji Daoren snorted instead. Hui Xian old ancestor knew that his sect was also annihilated by Zhong Tai, Xian Yu and the other sects, and thought that these words had touched his sore spot. He smiled faintly and asked again, Although Master Dami annihilated spirit-returning sect, it is normal for us cultivators to fight and kill, so why did he need to cover it up after the matter? Ji Daoren sneered and said, Master Dami was also from spirit-returning sect. No matter what the reason was, it would not be good if it was spread out, so why would he take the initiative to tell the future generations to know? Hui Xian old ancestor nodded in realization. After Ji Daoren finished speaking, he did not bother about him and started to look around with the pearl. From just now's words, Hui Xian old ancestor had already roughly guessed what Ji Daoren was looking for. He looked at the latter walking to and fro, but stood at one side and did not make a sound. His gaze was faint, not knowing what he was thinking about. After an hour, Ji Daoren had already searched more than half of the cave hall, leaving only the southwest corner that he had not searched. After turning here, he raised his head and took a few glances, and his footsteps involuntarily paused, as if he had discovered something. With a tap of his toes, balls of white smoke rose up, and when he reached a height of 5 to 6 feet, he saw that there was no trace of anyone behind an alcove, only a tall stone door, with 2 ancient copper rings fastened on it, stained with rust, and on both sides were several lotus stone platforms, on which sat 7 white-haired Taoists with different expressions. He did not look at those corpses, but stared at the stone door, his expression slightly agitated, and muttered to himself, It should be here. With a wave of his sleeve, a gust of astral wind hit it, and the stone door's restrictions had already dispersed. With this blow, it collapsed backwards with a loud bang, and shook those white-haired Taoists on the lotus platforms into ashes. At this moment, a narrow elixir room appeared behind the door. Ji Daoren carefully sensed, and did not detect any spiritual opportunities, so he boldly walked in with a peace of mind. After entering, he took a few glances, and saw that the layout was simple. The original furnishings were mostly rotten, a thick layer of dust accumulated on the ground, and in the middle of the room, there was only a copper furnace. Behind the furnace was a cattail hassock. Other than that, there was nothing else. He walked 2 rounds, and there was no other way out. He was surprised and thought to himself, could it be that I've found the wrong way? Just as he was about to leave, his mind changed, his eyes flashed, and with a wave of his sleeve, the copper furnace was pushed to one side. As soon as the furnace was pushed away, a square well was revealed. The whole body was built with white jade, and inside was a pile of strange stones, piled up with thousands of greasy and slippery pebbles. In every stone there was a small hole, from which fine-colored smoke was spewing out, the light reflected, and the thin mist was gently gathered. At the top, there was a jade bowl, containing a green bead the size of a goose egg, smooth and round. There were fine silver inscriptions on the surface, and from time to time, thousands of needle-like fine colorful rays were released. When Ji Daoren saw this, his face was filled with excitement, and just as he was about to take it, he seemed to suddenly remember something, and carefully took out a silk handkerchief from his sleeve, wrapped it around his hand, and then went forward to grab the bead. He was extremely excited, and after confirming that it was not a fake, he could not help but burst out laughing. He had also heard the seniors of his sect mention this item, and just wanted to take the opportunity when the dragon pillar restriction dissipated to come and have a try. But after all, it was only a few words, and might not be true, so he was originally prepared to return without any success, but he did not expect that he would actually get this treasure of the legends so smoothly. The joy in his heart was indescribable. After looking at it for a while, when he heard footsteps behind him, he did not keep it, and still held it in his palm to observe carefully. Just now, while Ji Daoren was not around, Hui Xian, old ancestor, had already searched the entire pit, but did not find the demi-book, and was disappointed. Right now, when he saw this treasure, his eyes could not help but reveal a strange splendor, but he quickly restrained it, and tried to make his tone as calm as possible, and asked, could this be the 9 Huang star bead? Ji Daoren said, it is just one of them. Hui Xian, old ancestor, could not help but ask, then where are the other 8? Ji Daoren looked back at him, and said with a smile that was not a smile, there are a total of 8 palaces under the dragon pillar, and they should be stored separately. But I am not greedy. To be able to get one is already lucky. Even if I get the rest, I am afraid I will not have the fortune to enjoy them. When Hui Xian, old ancestor, heard that, his heart moved slightly, but he said, with this item in hand, I think it will be easy for fellow Taoists to deal with that Zhang Taoist. Ji Daoren flipped his wrist, kept the treasure bead, and said, I still need to go back and refine it. It cannot be used now. Hui Xian nodded, I have waited for a long time, and delayed for a long time. I cannot stay here for long and should go out. Chapter 7:18. Ji Daoren had already gotten what he wanted for this trip, so he naturally had no objections. Together with Hui Xian, old ancestor, they returned using the original route. This was much faster than when they came, and in just less than an hour, they were back on the surface. After they came out, the two of them raised their heads and saw the curtain covering the sky. Sheng Gujing had already blocked their way, and they had already expected this, hence they were not flustered as they stood there without moving, waiting for the people from Zhongtai to arrive. In just an instant's worth of time, they saw a ray of light flying over from afar, and in a short while, a Taoist wearing a crown and a formal attire walked out from the light. It was Elder Zhongtai Lin. When he saw Hui Xian, old ancestor, he couldn't wait and asked, Hui Xian, have you obtained Founding Master's personal letter? His words were impolite, and Hui Xian, old ancestor, was infuriated as he cupped his hands and said calmly, Elder Lin, there is no personal letter from Founding Master to me in the underground palace. Elder Lin's face darkened as he shouted sternly, Hui Xian, don't you dare to play tricks. He used his hand to point upwards. "Look at the pillar in the sky. Without my permission, don't even think of leaving this place." Hui Xian, old ancestor, said unhurriedly, "Elder Lin, don't be anxious. Let me finish what I have to say. Although I did not obtain Founding Master's personal letter, but I have obtained another treasure, so this trip is not in vain." Elder Lin was half believing and half doubting as he said, "Since that's the case, quickly hand it over. As long as you hand it over to me, I will immediately let you go." Hui Xian, old ancestor, said, "But this item is not in my hands." "Then where is it?" Hui Xian, old ancestor, smiled and moved aside. Elder Lin looked over in astonishment, and when he saw Ji Daoren, a shocked expression surfaced on his face. Hui Xian, old ancestor, had once said that he would bring along a disciple as a helper. Just now he saw the two of them at this moment. As he was under Zhong Tai realm, he didn't pay much attention to it. But now that he took another look, he discovered that this person's cultivation was actually a third-stage realm cultivator, and he subconsciously took a step back. Panicking, he asked, "You? Who are you?" Ji Daoren saw that he was flustered and despised him in his heart. He mocked, "I am only fellow Taoist. Hui Xian is afraid that you, Zhong Tai, are up to no good, so he invited me over to help. Watch carefully. This is the item I obtained from the underground palace. Hold it tight." With a flick of his sleeve, he threw out the 9 yellow star bead that he had obtained from the underground palace without any hesitation. Elder Lin was extremely vigilant. Seeing a dark green bead flying towards him, he didn't dare to go forward to receive it. Twisting his sleeves, he gathered his magic power and held it in midair. Looking at it carefully, he was stunned at first, but then a look of joy appeared on his face. The spiritual vigor in the bead was so abundant that he had never seen it before. Would it be able to shake the mountains and crack the earth? After a while, he let out a long breath, looked over and said, "Hui Xian, you have done a good deed." Hui Xian ancestor said calmly, "Since that is the case, Elder Lin, please open the way." Elder Lin made a sound of acknowledgement. He didn't want Hui Xian to stay there any longer, so he kept the 9 yellow star bead and held it tightly in his hand, and took out a token. He waved it towards the sky and saw a crack in the sky, revealing a small exit. He said, "Hui Xian, quickly go on your way. There might be people coming to hunt you down later, but don't worry, the sect leader knows about your contribution. It is just for show. As long as you don't make any mistakes, after you reincarnate, I, Zhong Tai, will naturally send people to look after that place." Hui Xian ancestor put on a grateful expression and cupped his hands. "Then Elder Lin, please thank the sect leader on my behalf." Elder Lin waved his hands and urged, "Let's go, let's go." Ji Daoren didn't say a word and charged out of the sky screen first. Hui Xian ancestor originally thought that he would make a move, but seeing his actions, he guessed that he might have other thoughts, so he did not make a sound, bade farewell, and also headed towards the sky. At this moment, the high clouds in the sky parted, and a ray of light landed in front of him. Chu Changji came out and bowed. "Master, was the trip successful?" Hui Xian nodded his head and turned to Ji Daoren. "Fellow Taoist threw away the 9 yellow star bead and didn't snatch it back. What do you want?" Ji Daoren smiled faintly and said, "Even if I give it to him, can he really take it away?" He looked down and lifted his chin slightly, indicating, "In a moment we will know." Hui Xian ancestor knew that he definitely had a trick up his sleeve, so he focused and looked down. Once the two of them left, Elder Lin was completely at ease. He pinched the spiritual bead and looked at it, clicking his tongue. After looking for a while, he was about to put it into his sleeve. But just at this moment, the bead suddenly trembled and gave off rays of spiritual light, like numerous needles piercing into the flesh and bones. When he was shown by this light, his entire body's qi and blood surged, his vital energy seemed to burst out of his body and poured straight into the bead. Not good. He was shocked and hastily used his Fa Li to get rid of it. But as soon as the bead left his hand, it suddenly trembled and spouted out a red mist. In a flash, the red mist surged up and surrounded him. Elder Lin's nose instantly smelled a hot and fishy wind and instantly felt his strength disappearing. At first he was still struggling violently, but after 10 breaths, his head gradually became dizzy and he no longer resisted. In the end, his vision turned black and he completely lost consciousness. Hui Xian ancestor saw this scene and was secretly shocked. He stroked his beard and said, "This bead indeed has other mysteries. Luckily I have not made a move just now." Just now when he was in the underground palace, it was not that he did not have any greedy thoughts, but out of cautiousness, he resisted and did not make a move. Right now he felt fortunate and turned his head to take a look. He saw Ji Doran's expression as if he had long known this would happen, so he asked, "May I ask, Dao brother, is there something strange about that bead?" Ji Doran glanced at him and said, "I heard my sect elders say that this 9 Huang star bead is treacherous and evil. Every time it is used, it needs to feed on a cultivator's vital blood, and 10 Yuanian cultivators are needed to nourish one bead. Even so, after using it, their vitality will be greatly damaged. If not for this restriction, how would spirit-returning sect be exterminated?" He sneered again and pointed below. This person did not know what was going on and touched it with his body, and was treated as a sacrifice by the bead. Hui Xian ancestor squinted his eyes. No wonder Ji Daoran was just now wrapping his hand with a handkerchief and did not dare to touch it. So this was the reason. And it also made sense that he only took 1 star bead. With just 1 star bead, if he wanted to use it, who knows how many cultivators' vital blood would be used to nourish it. With 9 in his hands, why would he find so many cultivators to nourish it? Even if he took it, it would be useless. After the two of them waited for 100 breaths, the red mist below dissipated, revealing a thin piece of human skin that floated down. In just a short while, a Yuanian cultivator's vitality was sucked dry by it. When Taoist Ji saw that the 9 yellow star pearl's brilliance was even brighter, he was pleased. He waved his hand, wanting to retrieve it, but this time, it was not as easy as before when he used his dermic power. The pearl actually struggled and escaped from his grasp. Ji Daoran was also stunned and wanted to cast his spell again. But this time he still could not catch it. Instead, the 9 Huang star bead let out a sharp whistle and spread far away. Then with a xiao sound, it shot up to the clouds like a firework. It paused for a moment and with another boom, it turned into a thin jade line and flew towards the south. Its momentum was as fast as lightning, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the horizon. It happened so suddenly that Ji Daoran also did not expect it. Seeing that the treasure that he had just now ran away just like that, he was anxious and angry. He roared angrily and his figure suddenly moved. Like a rainbow, he soared into the sky and chased after it. Hui Xian old ancestor was also stunned by this unforeseen event. After his expression changed a few times, he finally relaxed a little. He saw a clue. Ji Daoran looked like he was very familiar with this treasure bead, but he obviously did not know some key points. Otherwise, why would he make such a mistake? But this person's departure messed up his original plan. Just as he was about to think of a way, he heard a rumbling sound in his ears. The sound was distant and boundless, reverberating in the mountains. He couldn't help but look over in surprise and discovered that the sound was actually coming from the southwest dragon pillar. His thoughts turned and his expression changed slightly. He said to Chu Changji, "Quickly go." As soon as his words landed, he and Chu Changji used their escape techniques and flew towards the west. On the golden platform, sect leader Qiao was exchanging toasts with the heads of the 3 sections. At this moment he suddenly paused and looked towards the southwest. Hizhu also put down her wine cup and listened carefully. She said, "This sound seems to be coming from the direction of the dragon pillar." Chen Yuan and Mao Wei both looked towards sect leader Qiao. Even though sect leader Qiao had an agreement with Hui Xian old ancestor, he didn't ask him to make such a big commotion. It was just that at this stage he could only go according to the previous plan. He looked at the few people seated and cupped his hands. "Everyone, don't look at me. I also don't know what exactly happened. Why don't we wait for a while? I think there will be disciples coming to report." Hizhu sneered and said, "Wait? If we wait for a while more, I'm afraid that the thing below the dragon pillar will disappear to who knows where." Sect leader Qiao pretended to be displeased and said, "What does he Zhangmen mean by this? If you don't believe my Zhongtai sect, Then why don't you follow me to take a look? Zhang Yan raised his brows at this moment, stood up and walked to the side of the golden platform. His sleeves behind his back, his eyes glimmered as he looked far into the sky. Sect leader Qiao saw his actions and asked in surprise, Shenren Zhang? Is there anything wrong? Zhang Yan said in a deep voice, I just now sensing spiritual opportunity. I feel 8 strong qi channels surging. The closest one is the southeast dragon pillar. I think other than this pillar, the other 7 dragon pillars also have some unusual movements. At the same time, the 9 Huang star pearls seemed to have received some kind of summons and was flying rapidly towards the south. Ji Daoren had long been left behind by it and disappeared without a trace. It only took a day and a night for the pearl to travel from Dongsheng Northland to the southern continent. When it reached the borders of the Great Qin Nation, it didn't stop at all. It flew straight in the direction of Nanwu Mountain's Guandan courtyard. After another half a day, it reached the boundary. This place was not where the celestial city was located, so there was no prohibition formation. In addition, the disciples of the sect were forced by the miasma recently, so most of them meditated in the cave abode, and there was no one patrolling the mountain. Therefore, it was unimpeded all the way into the inner hall, and after making one round, it sank into the ground and disappeared. Zhang Boyan was refining medicine in the pill room at this moment, but he felt a sense of fear in his heart for no reason. His hands trembled, and the fire head was not directed properly. The earth fire rushed up, and a burnt smell entered his nose. He knew that this furnace of medicine was ruined. He frowned unconsciously, not because of this furnace of medicine, but just now, at that moment, he felt like he was being targeted by some ferocious creature. Chapter 719. Outside the southwest dragon pillar, dozens of rays of light flew over and stopped in front of the pit. Sect leader Qiao was the first to step out and look around. After pondering for a while, he said to the person behind him, Junior brother Bai, take the disciples and set up formation flags in all directions. No one is allowed to enter or leave within a radius of 30 miles. If there's anything unusual, report to me immediately. Mao Wei rolled his eyes and stepped forward to stand in front of Elder Bai, saying, Wait. Elder Bai stopped and cupped his hands, saying, Sect leader Mao, what can I do for you? Mao Wei pointed to the 3 Taoists behind him, devout, good sincerity, and pure white, and said, My 3 junior brothers have been treated well by your sect. Now that they've had a full meal, it's time for them to digest their food. Why don't you go with Elder Bai? Elder Bai snorted. It was obvious that he was worried about Zhongtai's disciples. However, the other party was also the leader of a sect, so it wasn't appropriate for him to say anything. He couldn't help but look at sect leader Qiao. Sect leader Qiao, however, wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and said, It's more than I can ask for if the 3 sages of Qingxian are willing to help. He then instructed Elder Bai, The 3 Taoists are guests after all. Sect leader Mao is too polite, but you can't take it seriously. You have to be careful in everything. Elder Bai understood and bowed, then said, My 3 Taoists, please follow me. After that, he flew into the sky and headed north. Mao Wei pouted and the 3 of them followed. Sect leader Qiao said to the person beside him, Summon the disciples on duty to see me. There were originally disciples patrolling all around the dragon pillar, but Elder Lin had sent them far away for convenience's sake and because of the victory song that covered the sky. After the dragon pillar shook, these disciples were not allowed to go near it, so they didn't know what was happening inside. Now that they heard the sect leader's summon, they hurried over, but their expressions were full of fear. Sect leader Qiao pointed below and asked, You've been on duty here. Have you seen any outsiders enter this place before? One of the disciples hesitated for a moment before bowing and replying, reporting to sect leader, An hour ago, Elder Lin said that he saw something strange and ordered us to stay away. He personally went in to check, but he hasn't returned yet. He Zhu mocked, Could it be embezzlement? When sect leader Qiao heard this, his expression became unhappy. He flung his sleeve and said, I have a clear conscience. I also know He Zhangman's ability. If you don't trust me, Zhong Tai, then you can go and check it out yourself. Mao Wei hurriedly came over to smooth things over, saying, He Zheng, this is your fault. The matter has yet to be investigated clearly. How can you come to such a conclusion? He Zhu laughed dryly and cupped his hands. Fellow Taoist Xiao, I misspoke. Ever since Zhang Yan arrived, he had been watching coldly from the sidelines. He didn't join the four of them and only looked around. At this moment, he suddenly raised his eyebrows as if he had sensed something. He looked down again, then rolled up his sleeves and released his transcendence energy. A moment later, he came up with a dried human skin corpse. When sect leader Qiao saw it, he exclaimed, Junior brother Lin. Everyone's eyes narrowed. As elders, they were naturally knowledgeable. They could immediately tell that Elder Lin's blood had been sucked dry and he had died. Chen Yuan frowned and said, This method is very evil. Could it be that the person who came is a remnant of the heretical sects? Zhang Yan shook his head slightly and said, That might not be the case. Ever since the Dragon Pillar meeting, sect leader Qiao was very trusting of Zhang Yan. Moreover, now that he was facing the leaders of the three southern sects, he felt that he still needed to rely on him. Thus, he cupped his hands and said, Sage Zhang, may I ask if you found any clues? Zhang Yan said, If the cultivators of the heretical sects killed someone, why would they leave a corpse behind? Could it be that they're not afraid of being found out? Therefore, I think that if Elder Lin didn't come across some vicious thing, then he must have been hit by some evil transcendent artifact. Furthermore, the other party used some tricks and left in a hurry before he could clean up the mess. Mao Wei thought about it and agreed, That's right. Sage Zhang's words make sense. If I were the culprit, I'd definitely come to destroy the corpse and get rid of the evidence. He Yizhu said impatiently, Everyone, the most important thing right now is to find out whether the item underneath has been taken away or not. As for the other matters, why don't we talk about it later? Chen Yuan said, Among us, He Zhangmen is the best at detecting spiritual energy. Why don't we ask He Zhangmen to go down and investigate? Mao Wei didn't object and said, That's good. Sect leader Qiao didn't say anything, which could be considered as a tacit agreement. Elder Lin had already been dead for an hour. Just now, there was such a huge commotion here. Even if there was that Taoist book underneath, it had probably been taken away by someone. Whether they could go down or not, it didn't matter anymore. He Yizhu didn't decline. She cupped her hands and flew up on a cloud towards the pit. Along the way, she soon arrived at the cave of 10,000 people. She first took in a breath of qi and after a brief identification, she let out 2 cold snorts. He went around the place again, even going to the pill room. However, because those dried corpses had already turned into ashes, he didn't find anything. He didn't have the mood to stay any longer and went back out of the cave using the original path. Seeing him come out, sect leader Qiao couldn't help but ask, How was it? He Zhu said, There is a pill room under the cave house. I don't know what was originally stored inside, but it has been stolen. Just now, I've used a secret technique to investigate. There were 2 people who came here. Everyone knows one of them. It's that Hui Xian Daoren. I don't know who the other person is. However, his cultivation isn't weak. I'm afraid he's not below Hui Xian. Yuanian cultivators' qi interacted with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from time to time. Wherever he passed by, there would always be a little bit of his qi left. Although he could try to hide it, Ku Xen sect had a secret technique. This time, he came so quickly that he could almost find out. Sect leader Qiao knew that he couldn't hide it from him. He invited Hui Xian over to clear his name. However, the other person wasn't in his plan. Elder Lin's death was strange. Although he was suspicious, he had no choice but to put on a resentful expression. He said, So it's that old man Hui Xian. This person and I haven't been on good terms for a long time. I originally didn't bother with him on account of our brother-in-law. However, I didn't expect that not only did he come here to steal treasures, he even killed an elder in my sect. If I catch him, I'll definitely destroy his spirit and grind his bones into ashes. Chen Yuan took a look at sect leader Qiao. He had also heard about the latter's discord with Hui Xian. Although he didn't believe what he said, There was no clear evidence to prove that it was Zhong Tai who did it. There was no point in continuing to pester him. He thought for a while and said, "Brother He, can you see which direction the two people escaped to?" Heiju grabbed a handful of qi movement and used her spell to identify it. She said with certainty, "Hui Xian should have gone west, while the other person should have gone south." Mao Wei snorted and said, "It seems that the two of them took advantage of Zhong Tai's banquet to sneak into this place. However, they were discovered by Elder Lin, so they killed him. Because there was a change in the dragon pillar, they hurriedly escaped. They were afraid that we would chase after them, so they escaped separately." He Zhu said loudly, "We should quickly order people to chase after them." Mao Wei stroked his beard. "The two of them are Yuanying level 3, but we don't know who has the treasure." Chen Yuan said, "Just now, when we came over, we didn't see anyone above the Jiantian realm. They must have intentionally escaped through the mountains and rivers to avoid detection. They must not have gone far. We should order people with outstanding escape techniques to chase after them first, then send people to follow behind. We will definitely be able to catch up." He Zhu hurriedly said, "I've brought a flying swallow boat with me this time. We can travel through the mountains and rivers without any hindrance. Why don't you hand over the person heading south to my Ku Xian school?" Sect leader Qiao also wanted to get back the thing that Hui Xian had stolen, so he cupped his hands at Zhang Yan and said, "Jinren Zhang, your sword escape technique is unparalleled. We can't even catch up to you. Why don't we ask you to chase Hui Xian back? We will definitely thank you after this." Zhang Yan thought for a while and smiled. "For sect leader Qiao's sake, I can do it." At this moment, Chen Yuan interrupted with a smile. "Brother Qiao, this is your fault. Jinren Zhang is an honored guest that you invited. This matter has nothing to do with him, so how can you trouble him? My Fengxiang Sword School's Rainbow Sword Master Zhu Xian is also good at escape techniques, and his cultivation is not inferior to Hui Xian's. With him, we will definitely be able to capture this person." Sect leader Qiao wanted to say something, but at this moment, a loud sound came from the southeast direction. It sounded like rolling thunder. While he was surprised, a letter flew over. He recognized it was a letter from Zhong Tai, so he took it. When he opened it, his expression changed. Chen Yuan saw that his expression was not good, so he asked, "Brother, what's the matter?" Sect leader Qiao looked at the few people present and said in a deep voice, "Just now, disciples have come to report that the Southeast Dragon Pillar's prohibition has been automatically removed." What? The three sect leaders were all shocked. Previously, they had already secretly checked that although the restrictions on the 8 Dragon Pearls were weakening, only the Southwest Dragon Pillar's restrictions were dissipating the fastest. Originally, they had speculated that it would take at least a few decades for the other 7 pillars to reach such a state, but the unforeseen event in front of them had caught them off guard. Chen Yuan pondered for a moment, then said with a straight face, "Everyone, although the two of them have escaped, as long as they are still in the Dongxing continent, we can still find them. I think that the most important thing now is not to capture the two of them, but to guard the remaining 7 dragon pillars to prevent others from stealing them." Mao Wei clapped his hands and said, "That's right." He Yizhu said righteously, "Since our 3 sects have come across this matter, we can't just sit back and do nothing. We will naturally share sect leader Qiao's burden." Sect leader Qiao knew that if the remaining dragon pillars were handed over to the 3 sects to guard, the things in the underground palace would probably belong to them. However, if he did not agree, he was afraid that the 3 sects would bear a grudge against him. At the moment, Zhong Tai was still unable to deal with the 3 sects alliance. He secretly scolded, "Let them be happy for now. When I, Zhong Tai, have completed my Taoist technique, I will naturally get back at them." However, he was also unwilling to let the 3 sects take all the advantages. After thinking for a while, he said, "How about this? Shenwu Mountain is the closest to the Qian position dragon pillar, so I will ask sect leader Zhang to guard this pillar, and Duishi dragon pillar will still be guarded by me, Zhong Tai. As for the other 5 pillars, I will have to trouble the 3 of you." Zhang Yan was only here to attend the banquet, but he was given a dragon pillar for free. Although the three sect leaders were unwilling, they did not want to offend him because of his supernatural powers and Taoist techniques, so they could only accept it. As for the remaining 5 dragon pearls, they would be divided among the 3 sections. This was sect leader Qiao's intention. He wanted to use this opportunity to sow discord among them. Unexpectedly, Mao Wei did not fall for his trick. He smiled and said, "Daoren is very lazy. I'm afraid he won't be able to guard 2 pillars. Just 1 pillar will do." He paused for a while and continued, "If everyone is assured, then the Li Nan dragon pillar will be handed over to Daoren." Seeing that he took the initiative to take a step back, Hiju was overjoyed and said, "Good, good. Then my Ku Xen sect will reluctantly guard the Kan and Zhen pillars." The Kun position dragon pillar in the southwest had already been opened, and 5 pillars were divided among the 4 of them, leaving only the Sun and Zhen pillars. In the end, they fell into the hands of Fengxiang Sword School. Chapter 720. After dividing the dragon pillars, the 3 sect leaders were satisfied, but no one mentioned the matter of capturing Hui Xian and the others. If it was previously, they might have the heart to try, but now that they had the dragon pillars in their hands, they only needed to wait and they would reap the rewards. Under such circumstances, they were naturally unwilling to send their disciples to risk their lives against third-stage realm cultivators. As the restriction on the dragon pillars could dissipate any time, the trio of He, Mao and Chen were afraid that the treasures hidden in the underground palace would be taken by others, so they found an excuse and left first. Zhang Yan looked at the trio's escaping light and said, "Sect leader Qiao, Hui Xian has only been gone for 2 hours and he didn't dare to use the extreme heaven escaping technique. If we chase after him now, there's still a chance." Sect leader Qiao thought for a while and finally sighed. He shook his head and said, "Who knows if the treasure is with Hui Xian? It's useless to chase him all the way. Sect leader Chen is right. As long as he's still in Dongsheng continent, we can find him." Zhang Yan took a look at him and said, "If the Taoist book left behind by Patriarch Dami, aren't you afraid that it would fall into the hands of outsiders?" Sect leader Qiao hesitated for a moment before saying, "To be honest, Hui Xian's lifespan is coming to an end and he's about to reincarnate. Even if the thing hidden below is really that Patriarch's handwritten book, how long would he have to comprehend it? There's no benefit at all. I still can't understand why he would do this." Zhang Yan nodded. "If it's not him, then it's most likely related to someone else." Sect leader Qiao thought to himself, "Hiju said that this person's skills are not below Hui Xian, so he shouldn't be a nobody." Although the 3 evil sects were exterminated that year, there were a few that escaped. If it's one of them, it would be troublesome. Zhong Tai and Xian Yu were behind the destruction of the 3 evil sections. Although the 2 sects had merged together, they were at their weakest and were on guard against the 3 southern sections. If the evil sect cultivators took this chance to seek revenge, they might not be able to handle it. Thinking about this, he did not want Zhang Yan to leave. He cupped his hands and said, "Spiritual Master Zhang, we do not know how many people are coveting the dragon pillar. If the treasure falls into the hands of the evil people, it will be detrimental to the celestial sect. Please be careful of the Qian dragon pillar." Zhang Yan returned the greeting and said, "There are more than 100 disciples from Mount Shenwu attending the banquet. When I am not here, please take care of them, sect leader Qiao." Sect leader Qiao hastily said, "Since you are Zhenren's disciple, you are our Zhong Tai's honored guest. We dare not treat you poorly." Zhang Yan took a step back and bade farewell. Then, he flicked his sleeve and a sword light flew out. The sword light circled around him and wrapped him in a ball of clear light. Then, it turned into an escape light and flew away. When he reached the extreme sky, he identified the direction and flew all the way to the northwest. In less than half a day, he saw another dragon pillar in the distance. It was no different from the one in the southwest. The white pillar pierced straight into the clouds, and there were dozens of flying peaks surrounding it. After he circled around it a few times, he rode the astral wind and landed on the cloud. There were several disciples on duty at Zhong Tai. The highest cultivation level was only at core formation. When they saw a Yuanian cultivator, they were all terrified. One of them braced himself and came forward. He bowed and said, "This is the forbidden area of Zhong Tai. May I know which spiritual master is here? Please stay." Zhang Yan put his sleeves behind his back and said, "I am in charge of Mount Shenwu's Hanyuan sect. Sect leader Qiao has asked us to guard this dragon pillar. You can go back." The disciple was shocked and said, "So it is spiritual master Zhang?" As a disciple of Zhong Tai, he had also heard of Zhang Yan's reputation. He knew that even the sect leader and a group of elders were polite in front of him. He did not dare to doubt him and retreated. He called out to the others and left with a few of his fellow disciples without looking back. Zhang Yan slowly descended. Not long after, he arrived at the entrance of the underground palace. He looked at it attentively for a while and knew that the prohibition here would disappear in 10 days or at most a month. He thought for a while and found a big rock nearby to sit down. He closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing, waiting for the day the prohibition would be lifted. At this moment, on the other side, Taoist Ji had lost the 9 yellow star bead. Although he felt a trace of fear in his heart, he was extremely unwilling to return empty-handed. Seeing that no one was chasing after him, he had other thoughts. He recalled that when he left, there was a huge commotion behind him. He thought to himself, maybe something happened at the dragon pillar, so the 4 sects did not send people to chase after me? His guess was already very close to the truth. However, he was used to being cautious. After waiting for a few more days, no one came. He was even more certain of his guess. He gathered his courage and turned back to watch from afar. With his knowledge, it was not difficult to tell that the dragon pillar's prohibition was dissipating. Seeing that there were Zhong Tai disciples patrolling everywhere, he guessed that there must be some arrangement. After weighing the pros and cons, he took the risk and sneaked in. After carefully investigating for a few days, he found that each sect had sent people to guard a dragon pillar. He could not help but think, no wonder they did not chase after me. So this is the reason. If this is the case, I may be able to find an opportunity to get another 9 Huang star pearl. However, he could not do it alone. After thinking for a long time, he retreated and found a hidden valley. He went deep into the mountain and opened a few caves underground. After confirming that there was no danger, he sent a letter and sat down to meditate. This place was not far from the dragon pillar. Less than 300 miles away, there were Zhong Tai disciples patrolling. However, they did not expect that the person who stole the treasure was hiding nearby. A few days later, someone fell into the valley. After searching for a while, he said softly, "Is Zhenren here? Chu Changji is here on my master's order." After saying it a few times, a white light came out from a crack in the rock. It rose 5 to 6 feet high and split into 2. Ji Daoren appeared. He looked at him and said coldly, "Taoist Hui Xian is still so careful. I invited him to come personally in the letter but only ordered my disciple to come. Could it be that you are afraid that my old friend will harm him?" Chu Changji bowed deeply and said, "Zhenren, you have misunderstood. After all, my master has to avoid the 4 sects' pursuit. I have to be careful." Ji Daoren sneered, "There is no need for that. Your master and I have guessed wrongly. Zhong Tai and the 3 sects of South Continent did not send anyone after us." Chu Changji was surprised. He cupped his hands and said respectfully, "My master has told me that if Zhenren Yun has any orders, please let me know." Ji Daoren snorted and said, "I don't need you to do anything. I don't need you to do anything. You just need to go back and tell fellow Taoist Hui Xian that there are signs of the remaining 7 dragon pillars being unlocked. Now that the 4 major sects are afraid of losing it, their manpower is probably staring at that place. I have an idea that might let fellow Taoist Hui Xian get what he wants." Chu Changji said, "Zhenren, can you tell me?" Ji Daoren sneered, "You are not important enough. I need Hui Xian to discuss this with me personally. Just go back and tell him what I said." After that, he flicked his sleeves and went back into the cave. Chu Changji stood in silence for a while. He bowed at him and left an array of light. Ji Daoren waited for 7 to 8 days. Just when he was about to lose his patience, an inconspicuous cloud of smoke floated over from outside the mountain. He identified the qi in the cave and came out from his hiding place. he said unhappily, Daoist Hui Xian, why are you so late? The cloud of smoke gathered in the middle and revealed the appearance of Patriarch Hui Xian. He cupped his hands and said, Daoist Ji, please don't blame me. When I came to see Elder Zhong Taiyan, I had to stay outside for a few days to prevent him from noticing me. I wonder if you managed to get the 9 yellow pearl back after we parted that day? Ji Doran's face froze. He said, I don't know what spirit returning sect did to the pearl. I couldn't get it in time. I miscalculated. Hui Xian looked regretful and said, what a pity. Daoist Ji waved his sleeves and said, let's cut to the chase. This treasure is very important to me, and I'm not willing to lose it. Today, I've sought you out because I want you to help me obtain another one. When Patriarch Hui Xian heard this, he said in a deep voice, Ji Daoran, is this going against our previous agreement? Ji Daoran looked at him and said, Daoist Hui Xian, what you are after is to get rid of that Daoist Zhang. Now that I found out that this person is looking at the Qian position dragon pillar alone, it's a rare opportunity. I will help you to kill this person and I can also get the pearl. Isn't this killing 2 birds with 1 stone? Patriarch Hui Xian hesitated. According to his original plan, he would first choose the location of the battle and then use the news of the 3 elixirs to lure Zhang Yan out. This would be the same as taking advantage of the right time, place and people. He could make use of his advantage to the maximum. Although Ji Doran's suggestion was somewhat feasible, it was too risky. After deliberating for a long time, he said, there are 2 difficulties. First, the supernatural power that Priest Zhang possesses is not a small matter. Just the 2 of us may not be able to subdue him, but if we were to go now, the master of Shao Tsongjing might not be willing to come. Second, this journey requires us to go to the northwest dragon pillar. If we fail, we can only go north. Ji Daoran had long expected that he would have such concerns and said leisurely, if we wait for that Daoist Zhang to get the 9 Huang pearl and after he understands the profoundness within, it would be even more difficult to kill him in the future. Moreover, even if we fail, at most we can go to the Python tribe. Isn't Daoist friend on good terms with them? Patriarch Hui Xian's brows furrowed. Looking at this stance, the other party would definitely not help him without the 9 Huang pearl. Previously, because he had other motives, he did not sign the contract. But now it seemed that he had miscalculated. Because he did not have much lifespan left, the other party could afford to wait but he could not. And this opportunity was hard to come by. After considering for a long time, he finally nodded and said, all right, there might be a chance this time. Daoran agreed, but the 2 of us are not enough. We need to find a few more people to help. Ji Daoran said, who is it? Patriarch Hui Xian said, do you remember that Lian Yangzi that I mentioned to you before? Ji Daoran said in surprise, isn't she unwilling to come with you previously? Has she already left? Why mention her again? Patriarch Hui Xian originally wanted to invite Lian Yangzi to steal the treasure together so that he could make use of her identity as the Zhongtai sect leader's concubine to frame Qiao Huanzhuan. But this woman was obviously not easy to get along with. Seeing that he was using her as a chess piece, she agreed on the surface but secretly left. Patriarch Hui Xian said coldly, that is Daoran purposely letting her go so that we can find out who is helping her in the dark. Now that I know clearly where she is, I will not allow her to not give in. Chapter 721. P.S. On the 5th day of the new year, congratulations on getting rich. After guarding under the Qian dragon pillar for half a month, Zhang Yan heard a series of rumbling sounds coming from it. Judging from the previous situation, it meant that the restrictive formation was gradually loosening and the opening of the mansion was imminent. He couldn't help but look up. After a short while, a clear stream seemed to wash over them, and the original scenery in front of them disappeared in the blink of an eye. A stone tablet that was about 20 feet long and 70 feet wide appeared on the ground. There were hundreds of inscriptions engraved on the surface of the tablet. He raised his eyebrows, took a few glances and deciphered it effortlessly. He said thoughtfully, Spirit returning sect? After pondering for a moment, he raised his sleeve and waved it. A gust of strong wind blew the stone slab to one side, revealing a deep pit under his feet. He sensed that the spiritual energy inside the room was disorderly. It should have been caused by the collapse of the original restriction. After confirming that there was no danger, Zhang Xian descended without any hesitation. Perhaps others might be afraid that the outside world would use some sort of method to seal the entrance and exit, but he had the 5 elements escape technique. If there wasn't a formation underground, it wouldn't be able to trap him. Not long after he went down, the Li Dragon Pillar in the south also shook. Mao Wei, who was watching over this place, did not seem to notice anything. He was still sleeping soundly on the big rock. The pure white Shinrin came up and said softly, "Senior apprentice brother, the prohibition spell below has been opened." Mao Wei made an sound and said, "Let me see." He sat up on the rock and stretched his waist. Then he jumped down energetically and arrived in front of the pit. He stuck his head out to take a look and found that the entrance to the cave was funnel-shaped. It opened at the top and closed at the bottom until it reached the bottom. It was like a well that could barely allow one person to pass through. After a while, he waved his hand and called Jinren Qing and Jinren Shanqing to the front. He said, "My 2 junior martial brothers, one of you will bring a few disciples to guard the exit of the mountain. The other will go to the high heaven. No matter who comes, block them for me." This dragon pillar was located in the south. The Wuchuan River was just over 100 miles away. There were 2 big mountains in the shape of a big bird spreading its wings, protecting the dragon pillar. There was only a narrow pass between the mountains for people to pass through. This was originally the land of Xianyu, but due to the special terrain, it was another dangerous place. Therefore, there were dozens of altars on the mountain. There were spells and restrictions everywhere. Cultivators couldn't cross the world unless they walked on the extreme heaven. Otherwise, even birds would find it difficult to cross. There was an immortal city called the Great Room, and it just happened to block the entrance. Thus, the security was extremely tight, and it was completely different from the other dragon pillars. As soon as the 2 Jinren and a few disciples left, only the pure white Jinren was left. He went closer to Mao Wei and said, "Shixiang, little brother has something I don't understand, but it's not convenient for me to ask. Now I want to consult Shixiang." Mao Wei could hear the strong resentment in his voice. He laughed and said, "You still don't know what you are planning. Are you wondering why Ku Xan School and Fengxiang Sword School can each take 2 places, but I only chose 1 place?" "Exactly." The pure white Jinren was unconvinced and said, "Qing Xian sect is also one of the 3 sects in the South Continent. Maybe it's not as glorious as Fengxiang and Ku Xan, but in terms of disciples and roots, we are not worse than these 2 sections. Why do they have such a big advantage, and Qing Xian sect has to suffer losses?" Mao Wei squinted at him and said, "You want to eat 2 dragon pillars in 1 bite? You have a big appetite, but I'm afraid you can't take it." The pure white Jinren was surprised and asked, "Why?" Mao Wei said, "I don't know how many cultivators from the Fengxiang sword sect are here, but I think there should be quite a number of them, and there should be quite a number of missing pearls as well. As for my Qing Xian sect, we only have a dozen or so people. We must unite together in order to protect ourselves. If we covet the 2 dragon pillars, it would be like opening a fist without any strength, giving others an opportunity to take advantage of." The pure white Jinren was shocked and said in a low voice, "Shixiang, you mean there are external enemies here?" Mao Wei snorted and shook his head. It's hard to say, but there's no harm in being careful. You just need to be more alert." Then he pointed to the pit and said, "Go inside and check it out. If there's any treasure, bring it out. If there's none, it's okay, as long as you keep yourself safe." The pure white Shinrin said, "All right, I'll be back soon." He bowed and jumped into the hole. After waiting for more than 2 hours, a white light flashed at the entrance of the hole. He held an item in his hand and rushed out with an excited expression. He said excitedly, "Shixiang, look what I've found." He spread out his hand, and there was a square wooden box in his palm. He opened it slowly and revealed a round green jade bead. The moment the lid of the box was opened, a ray of treasure light shone out, illuminating the area within a few feet. It was obviously a rare treasure, especially the spiritual vigor that surged like a boundless sea. Among all the treasures that Mao Wei had seen in his life, there were few that could compare. He widened his eyes and exclaimed, "What a treasure!" The pure white Shinrin said excitedly, "Shi Xiang, since you've got the treasure, why don't you go back to the mountain?" Mao Wei waved his hand and said, "What's the hurry? You're in such a hurry. Are you afraid that people don't know that you've found a great treasure?" The pure white Shinrin slapped his forehead and said, "It's my oversight." Mao Wei thought for a while. He closed the lid of the box, took it and put it into his sleeve. He thought to himself, "I have this treasure bead here. I don't know what He Yizhu and Qin Yuan found, but it shouldn't be too bad." As he was thinking, his sleeve suddenly shook and something strange happened. His chest felt like it was hit by a fierce hammer. He couldn't help but take a step back and almost couldn't catch his breath. He thought to himself, "Not good." With just a thought, his body suddenly turned into a conveyance light and flew back. At the same time, the treasure light was activated to protect his whole body. When he looked again, he saw that the thing that attacked him just now was actually the green bead. At this moment, it had followed him like a shadow and was colliding with the treasure light. It seemed to be crazy and kept making violent sounds, as if it wanted to break in. The pure white Shinrin finally reacted. He threw out a small seal and with a bang, it was knocked back. When he looked at it, he found that it was missing a small corner. He immediately felt distressed. When he looked at the green bead again, he saw that it was not damaged at all. Mao Wei shouted, "Shi Xiang, don't use treasures. You and I will work together to take it." The green bead seemed to realize that it couldn't get its hands on it and suddenly jumped back. It wanted to escape to the sky. How could Mao Wei allow it to escape? The high cloud above their heads spun and they reached out to grab it. Together, they used their mana to pull it back in the sky. But the green bead was very strong and kept struggling. After a while, the two felt that they couldn't do what they wanted. Mao Wei made a prompt decision and said, "Shi Xiang, don't let it go. Escape from yuanying with me." The pure white Shinrin responded. The two shouted in unison. With two booming sounds, a ray of light rushed up from the fontanelle. In the smoke, two nascent souls flashing with azure light flew out. Both were about 10 feet tall. Light bells hung on their bodies and white clouds were under their feet. As soon as yuanying came out, the two's mana suddenly increased. They chanted the incantation and a dazzling halo of light floated down from their bodies and fell on the green bead. Only then did it gradually suppress it. After about a moment, the bead finally stopped moving. But the two still didn't dare to let down their guard. They carefully took it and put it into a copper cup. Then, they stuck several talismans on it and put it into their sleeves. Only then did they relax. A figure flashed and the pure white Shinrin rushed to Mao Wei's side and asked anxiously, "Shi Xiang, are you hurt?" Mao Wei pointed to his chest. The dirty outer robe was torn, revealing a black soft shirt inside. "Fortunately, I have the swollen corner robe to block it. I won't die." Just now, the accident happened so close at hand. He couldn't guard against it at all. If he wasn't wearing this precious robe that no one knew about, his life would be in danger. He rubbed his chest and said, "This bead looks evil. It's not a righteous one. Did you see anything strange down there?" The pure white Shinrin showed a frightened expression and said, "I was about to tell Shi Xiang that there are more than 10,000 dried corpses down there. I don't know which sect they belong to." Mao Wei's expression was a little serious. But after a while, he suddenly laughed. The pure white Shinrin was surprised and asked, "Shi Xiang, what are you laughing at?" Mao Wei gloated and said, "I was thinking that if it's not easy to get the treasures here, then it's not easy to get the treasures under the underground palace. If Chen Yuan and He Zhu are not careful, I'm afraid they will also suffer." At the same time, there was a sudden scream above the Gen-rank dragon pillar. A green light flew up from the flat ground and went to the sky. In a moment, it broke through the sky and disappeared without a trace. He Yizhu looked at the dried corpses on the ground with a gloomy face. The disciples of the Ku Xen faction beside her were still in shock. The Ku Xen faction was good at refining medicine and using elixirs as spells. But they were far behind the Qingxian faction and the Fengxiang faction in terms of adaptability. Just now, when they took out the bead, they were not on guard, and the lives of several disciples and an elder were taken. Although they tried to catch it later, it was still a step too late and it still escaped. At this moment, a rumbling sound came from the north. An elder reminded, "Faction Master, I'm afraid the restriction of the Dragon Pillar has been removed." He Zhu exhaled, then stomped his feet and said, "Let's go." In an instant, he turned into a conveyance light and flew away. Quantamin, Nanhua Mountain, Qin Country. Zhang Boyan stood on a high pavilion. His eyes flashed with green light, and he kept looking around. This was the highest place in the whole of Quantamin. From here, he could see the situation of the mountain gate at a glance. In the past half a month, the poisonous miasma that originally covered this place had somehow weakened a little, and it was showing signs of disappearing. Everyone in the sect was happy, and he didn't have to refine the antidote anymore for a few days. But not only did he not feel relaxed, he felt that the surroundings were full of danger, as if he was shrouded by a gloomy and evil aura, which made people tremble. Now, under the urging of Shang Junqing, Fengxiang Sword School sent a group of cultivators to refine the underground restriction day and night. Looking at the situation, they would be able to dissolve the restriction within a year. Zhang Boyan thought to himself, "I can't stay here for long. Tomorrow, I need to say goodbye and return to the mountain gate to meet the manor master and report what happened here." At this moment, he suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. Looking up, he saw the astral clouds surging above the sky pole. Then, a vortex suddenly split open, and a green brilliance broke through the clouds, falling straight down. However, before it landed on the ground, a sudden shout came from within the mountain gate. A shadow-like sword light flew up and collided with the green light. There seemed to be a clap of thunder in the air, and the sword light rolled back. However, the brilliance only deviated slightly, and its momentum did not decrease. With a rumble, it smashed through a large hall and into the ground, leaving only a pile of roof tiles and rubble. Chapter 722. Shang Qingjun appeared in the air and took the 100-shadow sword with a wave of his hand. However, his face was filled with surprise. Just now, he saw an object flying over from the sky. If it was someone else, they would check it out, but he was arrogant and did not think much about it. He slashed at it with his sword, but he did not expect that not only did his 100-shadow sword not do anything, it was also knocked back. This made him feel extremely embarrassed. Hearing the commotion outside, Dean Go Su-min and the two pavilion masters flew out. When they were in the air, they saw that a corner of the hall had collapsed. They did not know what to do, so they turned around and asked, "Envoy, what happened?" The battle just now had only lasted for a short moment, so Shang Qingjun hadn't clearly seen what had flown over. However, he couldn't bring himself to say that he didn't know, so he could only pretend to be calm and grunted coldly. "A sneaky thing came over here just now, and I've already injured it. Now it has fled underground. Find it for me, don't disturb the opening of the restriction." Go Su-min and Sun Chu looked at each other and nodded. They cupped their hands together and left. Back in the hall, Go Su-min secretly called out to Sun Chu and said, "Junior apprentice brother, why do I feel a little uneasy?" Sun Chu said, "Senior apprentice brother, the poisonous miasma has disappeared. As long as we open the restriction, we will have completed our mission. Moreover, Envoy is here, what else can happen?" Go Su-min shook his head and said, "The poisonous miasma came and went very suddenly. Just now, another strange thing has come. Who knows what will happen in a few days? For the sake of our sect, we need to be on guard." Sun Chu said, "Then what do you think I should do, senior apprentice brother?" Go Su-min said, "A few days ago, I invited Zhang Zhang to drink wine and admire the moon. From his words, it seems that he has the intention to leave. I want to invite him to bring a few talented disciples to the North Continent, and then bring the central Dao books. If there are any changes here, it would be good for our Quantamin to preserve our orthodoxy." Sun Chu was slightly surprised and said, "Senior brother, things haven't come to this, right?" Go Sumin looked at the damaged hall behind her and said, "It's always good to have a way out." Sun Chu lowered his head in thought. After a long time, he said, "Little brother will go and talk to Mr. Zhang." Just as he was about to leave, another whistling sound came from the sky. The two of them looked over in surprise, only to see a green light flying down from the sky. Before he landed on the ground, the 100-shadow sword was pulled out. He rushed up and exchanged blows with it several times in the sky. Countless sparks flew out like fireworks. However, this time, it seemed like his side was still at a disadvantage. The sword circle was forcefully broken by the green light. It was thrown into the ground. However, with such a delay, everyone with sharp eyes could see clearly what was attacking. It was a pearl that shone with a green light. Shang Qingjun was attacked by the pearl twice in a row. He was exasperated and shouted, "Go Sumin, quickly call people over and dig the bottom for me." At this moment, Zhang Boyun, who was in the pavilion, had a dim light flashing in his eyes. As the two items were thrown into the ground, the poisonous miasma could no longer be sensed. However, the sense of danger was even stronger. Thus, he deduced, this pearl might have something to do with the changes that happened in the past few days. It seems like there will be a huge change in this place soon. I need to inform the chief first. After thinking for a long time, he took out a pen and paper from his sleeve and wrote down everything he saw. Then he sealed it and sent it out. After Zhang Yan entered the pit, he followed the tunnel deep into the cave. After walking for 4 hours, he arrived at a huge underground palace. He stepped in and looked around. There were more than 10,000 Taoists sitting cross-legged on the ground. There were 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, surrounding an altar in the middle. The altar was about 3 feet high and there was a curtain hanging down from it. At the top, there was a golden gourd. At the 4 corners, there were spiritual beasts that were half a foot long. They were divided into white dragon, auspicious phoenix, green goat, and golden carp. The curtain was decorated with gold and jade flowers. Clear glass shone brightly and bright pearls shone brightly. He could faintly see a few blurry figures inside. With a tap of his feet, he flew over and landed on the altar in the blink of an eye. As soon as he landed, he saw that the ground was littered with broken jade and porcelain. Some of them could still be vaguely recognized. They were originally used to store pills. After a few glances, he seemed to be deep in thought. Then, he waved his sleeve and took a few steps forward. He raised his hand and lifted the curtain. He felt a brilliance jump into his eyes. Less than 5 steps away, there was a golden toad lying on the ground. It had protruding eyes and a bright pearl in its mouth. Its brilliance was like a flame, flickering and dazzling, filling up the inner tent. Opposite it was a crane with a crooked neck. There was still smoke coming out of its long beak. His gaze did not stop. He looked past the crane and the toad and looked back. He saw a dragon-patterned soft couch. On it sat a middle-aged Taoist with his eyes closed. He had a square mouth and a straight nose. He was tall and strong. On his head was a Pai Xiu crown. He was dressed in a purple robe. He looked dignified and dignified. He was the most respected person here. Behind him stood 2 beautiful women. Both of them were dressed in white without any accessories. Their hair covered their faces, and their faces couldn't be seen clearly. Their hands were clasped in front of their abdomens, and each of them held a green pearl that emitted a faint glow in the empty hall. Anyone that came here would be able to discern that these 2 jade pearls were precious treasures. However, Zhang Yan wasn't impatient to take them, and he instead swept his gaze back and forth a few times before his gaze finally descended onto an inconspicuous jade slip on the couch. He gently raised his hand. The jade slip flew into the air and fell into his palm. He inserted a stream of spiritual energy into it. In the blink of an eye, he read the contents of the jade slip. It was a cultivation method for cultivating qi. It was written in eroded characters. It looked very profound and profound. He could feel that there was an even more profound method hidden in the jade slip. However, if he did not practice this method well, he would not be able to read the rest. However, he had the supreme mystery true technique with him, so he didn't have to switch to another technique. Moreover, those who practice this technique might not necessarily have an advantage. The karma involved in this technique was bound to be taken over. Although he wasn't afraid, he wouldn't do something that would be of no benefit to him. After pondering for a while, he kept the jade scroll and bowed to the middle-aged Taoist. If I meet someone in the future who is fated to learn this, I will pass on this technique to your sect to repay you for taking your sect's treasure. Sorry for offending you. After saying that, he waved his hand and took the 2 green pearls from afar. He was about 5-6 zhang away from the soft couch. At first, the 2 pearls were still docile, but halfway there, as if they were activated, they abruptly scuttled forward, emitting a mournful whistling sound, unexpectedly revealing a vicious state. A glint flashed in Zhang Yan's eyes. His body did not move, but a mighty force surged out and firmly suppressed the 2 pearls. No matter how they whimpered, they were unable to advance a single step forward. Then, he casually rolled up his sleeve and kept them. After getting the pearls, he did not touch anything else and returned to the surface. At the same time, there were 2 conveyance lights in front of the Qian-position dragon pillar. They carefully circled above the pit but did not approach it. Instead, they retreated far away and stopped behind a mountain ridge. Then they revealed themselves. It was Ji Daoren and Hui Xian Grand Elder. Ji Daoren pointed at the cave door in front of him and said, "Brother Hui Xian, what do you think of what I said? That Taoist Zhang went down the underground palace. When he comes up later, he will definitely pass by here. This person relies on his mysterious Taoist skills and flying sword skills. If we let him attack calmly, even if he is not our match, he can still escape. Therefore, we need to ambush in front of the cave door. When he comes up, we will attack together and we will definitely be able to severely injure him." Hui Xian Grand Elder could also see the benefits. Zhang Yan was good at escaping, and choosing this moment to attack could indeed not weaken his advantage. However, he was not as optimistic as Ji Daoren. He calmly judged, since this person dares to go down alone, how can he not take precautions? If he doesn't hit the target and retreats, are we supposed to stand guard here? If it was in the past, they would not be afraid of this method. At most, they could imitate Patriarch Daimu and use a forbidden formation to seal this place. They would definitely be able to trap the person below. However, firstly, they did not dare to stay in Zhongtai's territory for long. Secondly, they still wanted to snatch the 9 yellow star bead that Zhang Yan had obtained. Thus, they definitely could not do that. Ji Daoren said, "How would I not know of fellow Taoists' worries? We can first set up formation flags in the surroundings. We do not hope to injure him but only hope to trap him for a moment. Then there will be a chance. At most, we can send another person to block his escape route and it will be foolproof." Hui Xian Grand Elder still frowned. He did not believe that it would be so easy to injure Zhang Yan. Therefore, he stroked his beard and did not speak for a long time. Ji Daoren took a few glances at him and said with some dissatisfaction, "Why is fellow Taoist so afraid of the slightest thing? Both you and I are traveling with our Dharmakayas. Even if we fail, we can just cast spells to return to our bodies. If we succeed, we can fulfill our long-cherished wish." When Hui Xian Grand Elder heard this, he thought of the fact that he did not have much lifespan left. He sighed and nodded reluctantly. "All right, let's set up according to fellow Taoist's suggestion." At this moment, 3 flowing lights flew over from the sky. He raised his head and said, "My disciple has arrived." 3 flowing lights flew over in a flash and landed on the ground. When the brilliance dispersed, Chu Changji walked out first and cupped his hands together. "Teacher, disciple has already invited Lian Yangzi and Elder Yu over." Hui Xian Grand Elder said, "Did you reveal any traces along the way?" Chu Changji said, "Disciple was afraid that the matter would be leaked, so I specially made a detour. Zhongtai is mostly guarding their own dragon pillars. The northwest dragon pillar is 1,000 miles away and no one has noticed us." Hui Xian Grand Elder nodded his head and looked behind him. Lian Yangzi's expression was not good. There was another person standing beside her. He had a head full of silver hair and there was a cloud floating above his head. Although his cultivation was not high, but standing there, his aura was not any weaker than anyone here. Ji Daoren looked up and down and sneered, "I was wondering who it was. So it is you, Bingy. No wonder no one came to investigate when you took in Xiao Huanjuan as a concubine. The influence of the ancestors is indeed useful." The Yu clan was originally the kin of founding Master Daimu. Their clansmen were spread all over Dongsheng and Northland. With this layer of relationship, Zhongtai was respectful to them on the surface but was secretly on guard against them. But it was also because of this that they avoided the Dragon Pillar battle and preserved the vitality of the clan. Elder Yu took a look at him and said sarcastically, "I heard that Fu Yang sect has a spiritual master Ji Song. He was one of the few great cultivators in this sect. But on the day when the mountain gate was broken by the 5 sects, he abandoned the humans in this sect and left without a care. Today, I finally see him in person." The two of them were at each other's throats. Hui Xian Grand Elder came up to mediate, "Taoist brother Ji, this time we are working together against the enemy, we are all from the same family." Ji Daoren sneered, "I don't know what this person is capable of." Elder Yu's gaze flickered and he said, "This time to deal with that Taoist Zhang, I opened the incense table and invited the talisman bestowed by my ancestor. I wonder if this is enough?" Chapter 723. When Ji Daoren heard Elder Yu mention his ancestor's magic treasure, he was also moved. He took a few steps back and said in a low voice, "Could it be the Qiyuan Constitution painting?" Elder Yu's expression was slightly reserved as he said, "I didn't expect fellow Taoist Ji to have heard of it." How could Ji Daoren not know about it? The Qiyuan Constitution painting was passed down by Master Dami. Sealed inside were the 3 divine power edicts that Master Dami personally cast before he ascended. They were divided into 3 edicts: break, guard, and fix. They were given to the younger generation to protect their lives. Thinking of this, he didn't dare to underestimate this person anymore. But he didn't know that although the edicts were powerful, they had already used 2 after thousands of years. The guard edict was tricked by Elder Jinzhong when Zhongtai first opened the sect. As for the break edict, it was used to deal with the corpse cult's magic treasure, the lifeless treasure coffin. Under the pressure of Zhongtai and Xianyue sects, Yu clan had no choice but to take it out. Now, they only had the most inconspicuous fix edict in their hands. Elder Yu didn't come this time because he was threatened by Hui Xian. In the past, when the 2 powers of the North Continent stood side by side, Yu clan could still deal with the 2 sections. But after the 2 sects merged into one, their position was somewhat awkward. Especially after Xianyue lost in the battle, Chunyuji had sent people to secretly plot. Later, Zhongtai seemed to have noticed and his attitude towards Yu clan became colder and colder. He even found a chance to expel many cultivators with the surname Yu. Under such circumstances, Yu clan was also eager to protect themselves. They originally had the intention to rely on the 3 sects of the south. But after thousands of years, the clan's foundation was in the north, and they couldn't just abandon it. Just as they were hesitating, Hui Xian ancestor told them about the plan to enter the continent. Without any other way out, they wanted to try to ally with him. In order to show their sincerity, they came to kill Zhang Yan together. Hui Xian ancestor said that Taoist Zhang will probably come out soon. Let's not delay and set up the formation flags first. Since this plan was suggested by fellow Ji, I believe you are already prepared. Setting up the array flags was not an easy task. It also required a clever concealment technique. Otherwise, the person being schemed against would sense that something was amiss and be prepared in advance, making it very difficult to succeed. Ji Daoren didn't say anything. Instead, he lifted his sleeve and took out a formation flag. He shook it against the wind and unfurled the flag. It wasn't an ordinary flag that was about half a foot long. Instead, it was about 5 feet long, almost as tall as a person. He stroked the golden embroidered flag with his hand and murmured an incantation. Soon, a cloud of black mist emerged from his palm. In the blink of an eye, the flag was dyed black and couldn't be seen anymore. He handed it over and said, I have used a secret technique in my sect to refine this. When I set up the formation, I will use this as the main flag. If one's cultivation is not higher than mine, they will not be able to detect it. Hui Xian took it and fiddled with it for a moment before passing it to Chu Changji and said, "You and Lian Yangzi go and arrange it together." Lady Lian curled her lips and said, "This servant doesn't know how to play with formation flags." Hui Xian elder said, "Lian Yangzi must be joking. The Lian family is a big clan of Dongsheng and there was once a formation master in the sect. How can a mere formation flag be a problem for you? Please do it quickly." Although he looked amiable on the surface, the words that came out of his mouth were unquestionable. Ji Daoren said coldly, "If you don't obey, that means you are not willing to put in any effort. What's the use of keeping you?" Lady Lian shuddered. Her expression changed a few times before she finally chose to submit. She bit her lips and took the formation flag before turning to leave. Hui Xian elder said to Chu Changji, "Go up and keep an eye on this girl. Keep a close eye on her and don't let her do anything." Chu Changji nodded his head and followed. Lian Yangzi was indeed an expert. In less than a dozen breaths, he had determined the position and laid out the hundreds of formation flags. He linked them together to form a formation full of hidden danger. Finally, he tossed the main flag into the formation. All the spiritual energy was concealed and not the slightest trace of it could be seen. After the two of them returned, Hui Xian elder said to Chu Changji again, "Disciple, once he comes out later and is restrained by fellow Taoist Yu's spell, you will go up and cut off his escape route." After instructing, he turned his head and said to Lady Lian amiably, "Lian Yangzi has just entered Yuanying and your talisman is not suitable for you. Fighting head-on is not your forte. You just have to keep an eye on the situation above and see if there are any outsiders here. If there is a chance, you can make a move to restrain him." Lady Lian originally thought that this person wanted her to fight at the front and in that case, she would definitely die. She did not expect him to be so easy to talk to. Although she did not understand the intention behind this, it was more than what she wished for. She said, "This servant understands." She curtsied and rode the wind towards the sky. Ji Daoren said coldly, "I see that this girl is resisting. With such arrangements, aren't you afraid that she will take advantage of the chaos to escape?" Hui Xian elder chuckled and said, "With the restriction that this girl personally set up here, no matter the success or failure of the matter today, she will not be able to escape responsibility. Moreover, the Yu family has already joined hands with us. Even if she escapes, where can she go?" Elder Yu interrupted, "It does not matter if Lady Lian is here or not. With my ancestors' edict here, do you still have to worry about not being able to take care of that Taoist Zhang?" Hui Xian elder smiled and said, "As what fellow Taoist said, that Taoist Zhang will definitely not be able to resist Taoist Zhang's edict. But it is not a bad thing to take extra precautions." Elder Yu's eyebrows raised. From his point of view, this was just an unnecessary move. Once this edict is issued, it can fix a person on the spot and no talisman or Dao technique can be used. But since he insisted on it, he did not say any more. The few of them discussed for a while, and to prevent Zhang Yan from sensing their qi activity, they all retreated far away. Once he came out, they would make their move. At this moment, Zhang Yan was returning to the surface, but he did not go back the way he came. Just now when he came, he was in case he missed something, so he followed the prescribed order and followed the path. Now that he came out, there was no need to do so. He used the earth escape technique and went straight up. Not long after, he escaped out of the underground palace. This place was 2 miles away from the pit he came from, but he inadvertently avoided that restriction. With a flick of his sleeves, he rode the strong wind and flew towards the sky. He had not gone far when his expression changed. He sensed several qi activity lying in wait at the side. There were even a few that he was familiar with. His thoughts turned and he smiled coldly. He slowed down his body and turned around. Casting his gaze down, he said, "I wonder which fellow Taoist is here to welcome I." When Elder Hui Xian and Ji Daoren saw that he did not go back the way he came, they knew something was wrong. Now that he had exposed their whereabouts, it was obvious that they could not act according to their original plan. Both of them were not people who would lose their composure in the face of a battle. Since the previous plan did not work, then they could only turn the dark into the light. They leaped out from their hiding places and surrounded him as they slowly came forward. Zhang Yan's gaze turned and saw that among the 4 people in front of him, other than the white-clothed Taoist, Elder Hui Xian, Chu Changji and Elder Yu were old acquaintances. He smiled and said, "It is indeed acquaintances. I see that all of you have killing intent in your hearts. I believe you are not here to reminisce." Elder Hui Xian sighed and said, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, you can cultivate in the Shenwu mountain. We will not make things difficult for you. It is just that you have interfered in the matters of the 2 sects and hindered our great plan. If you are willing to make a vow that after you return, you will close your residence and ignore the secular affairs, I can make the decision to let you go. What do you think?" Chu Changji did not speak at the side. He was originally following his master's lead and naturally had no objections. As for Elder Yu, he was invited by Elder Hui Xian to do his best as an ally. But if there was no need to fight to the death, of course he would be happy to see it happen. Ji Daoren was anxious. His purpose of coming here was to snatch the 9 yellow star pearl. If Zhang Yan really agreed to the matter, Elder Hui Xian might let him go. Then how would he be able to snatch the pearl by himself? Therefore, he would not allow that to happen. Without waiting for Zhang Yan to speak, he suddenly shouted and struck a golden light over. At the same time, he said, "Why are you talking so much with him?" But just as he made his move, he suddenly caught a glimpse of Elder Hui Xian's calm expression, as if he had already expected that he would do so. He was stunned at first and then suddenly came to a realization. He secretly scolded, "Old fox. Why would Elder Hui Xian want to reconcile?" It was obvious that he did not want to be the first to fight. So he purposely said those words to provoke him to go forward first. But he was not aware of it and fell into Doran's trick. However, since he'd made a move, he was unable to shrink back, so he could only secretly remember this debt and settle it in the future. He snorted and seized the opportunity when the treasure struck out to shake his shoulder, causing the vital energy in the surroundings to change, and he'd already executed the heaven and earth restriction technique. Chu Changji and Elder Yu were not to be outdone. At the same time, they struck out the talismans that they had long prepared. The former struck out a white light. The tip was 3 feet high and the tail was 10 feet long. It was wide at the front and narrow at the back. There was a small silver bean the size of a thumb in it. If one did not look carefully, it would be difficult to see it clearly. The latter, on the other hand, was a dozen or so hexagonal spears. They spun around in a blur. From the outside, they looked like cold flames. At this moment, only Elder Hui Xian did not make a move. He stared at Zhang Yan motionlessly, as if he was looking for a good opportunity. Zhang Yan saw a golden light fly near him. Before he could block it, he felt his body sink. He knew that the other party had used the heaven and earth imprisonment technique. He had fought several times with third-layer nascent soul cultivators, so he was already prepared. He calmly guided his flying sword, and a sword light leaped out, suddenly exploding like a rainbow. In an instant, several tens of sword lights splashed out, blocking all the magic treasures. Not only that, with a thought, another 10 sword lights turned around and flew towards the 4 people to kill. Taoist Ji opened his mouth and spat out a copper stick from his abdomen. It had a pointed tip, a square tail, and a hole at the top. When it reached the top of the sky, he shook it and a waterfall of fine threads burst forth like spider silk. The threads flew up and wrapped around the sword light. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed slightly. He could see that there was something strange about this item. He did not persist and with a thought he retracted the sword lights. Ji Daoren snorted. This item of his was the 1,000-snare heart thread. It was made from the silk of a 1,000-year white spider and the frozen mud of the ground lake. It was best used against swords. Once entangled by it, one would not be able to break free in a short period of time. He had thought that Zhang Yan did not know about it so he could scheme against him. In this way, he would be able to break his sword escape technique. The battle afterwards would be much easier. He did not think that the other party would not lose his caution and did not fall into the trap. He turned his head and said, "Why are you still not making a move?" On the surface, he was shouting at Elder Hui Xian. But in reality, he was urging Elder Yu to use the imperial statuary diagram. At this moment, Elder Yu was also anxious. The imperial statuary diagram could only be activated when he was within 300 feet. But his cultivation was only at the first layer of yuaning. At this moment, he was also enveloped by the forbidden lock technique. His movement was not as smooth as usual. Although it was not targeted at him, it was still extremely strenuous. Elder Hui Xian saw that and saw his difficulty. He flew forward and patted his back, transmitting his voice, "Fellow Taoist Yu, quickly make a move." Elder Yu felt a spirit enter his body from behind. His body instantly lightened. With a shout, he suddenly dashed out and was within 300 feet in an instant. He took out a talisman diagram and was about to open it. At this moment, Zhang Yan suddenly raised his head and looked at him. Elder Yu's body shook violently and he was unable to move. His face was filled with shock. Elder Hui Xian's eyes shone brightly. He let out a whistle and also used the Heaven and Earth Forbidden Lock technique. At the same time, he shouted, "Fellow Taoist Ji, quickly help him." How could Ji Daoren not know his intention? He pointed downwards and Elder Yu's hands and feet suddenly loosened. He knew that the opportunity was gone in the blink of an eye. He secretly gritted his teeth and raised the diagram to face Zhang Yan. Using force with both hands, he suddenly pulled it open. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.